Chapter 481. So you and I don't need to interfere? Nongzhu asked with a sarcastic smile. The other party had inserted himself into the conversation, clearly warning him that if he interfered in the matter between Yu Qianqiu and Yan Ji, then he might have to intervene as well. It was understandable. The six of them had always been relying on each other in order to gain a foothold in the cultivation world. Hua Zongming was the owner of this place, so he had to be the first to speak. Hua Zongming, are you threatening me? Nongzhu still had a smile on her face, but her eyes were cold. Hua Zongming shook his head and said, think what you want. Nongzhu, I just want to remind you that you won't interfere with the cultivation world of Wuxia. Of course I won't interfere with the cultivation world of Wuxia. Nongzhu pointed at Yu Qianqiu and said, if you want it you can check it out. This guy has left the Wuxia Cultivation Alliance and fought with the Daluo sect before he left. Now that he has left the cultivation world of Wuxia, he is no longer a member of the cultivation world of Wuxia. So, I won't interfere with the cultivation world of Wuxia. Pu Taidong coughed and took a step forward, saying, leaving the cultivation world of Wuxia doesn't mean he won't go back. Who knows if he's out for fun or something else. Pu Taidong, you've gone too far. Nongzhu waved her hand and pointed at the sky, saying, most of the soul-forming stage masters in the world came from the cultivation world of Wuxia. According to what you said, Yin Baikong is probably a member of the cultivation world of Wuxia. They frowned and looked at each other. Yan Ji said coldly, Nongzhu, are you determined to go against us? I never want to go against anyone. I just want to live a free and unfettered life. You should know that, Nongzhu said lightly. Then she looked back at Yu Qianqiu, pulled out the bamboo flute from her waist and gently stroked it in her hand, saying, but this guy exposed his identity in front of you because of me. I don't want to owe anyone anything. Otherwise I won't feel at ease. Today I will leave these words here. Before this kid leaves the Yang city I will not let anyone touch him. Nongzhu, do you think you can protect him alone? Mu Sang snorted coldly. Nongzhu suddenly turned around and stared at him. She said word by word, I, Nongzhu, can travel around the world freely. Do you think that I only know how to play? My southern sea's purple bamboo forest has been able to stand tall in the cultivation world for so many years. Do you really think that it can be exchanged for being aloof from worldly affairs? Mu Sang was stunned by his words. There was one thing he had to admit. Although few people had seen Nongzhu fight, he had never heard of him losing in the hands of anyone in the cultivation world for so many years. This alone was enough to prove that the world-famous Master Nongzhu would definitely not be simple once he made a move. There was an iron law in the cultivation world, and that was, those who were famous did not live up to their name. In the cultivation world, the weak were prey to the strong. No one could last long by relying on a false reputation. For someone like Nongzhu, who had been free and unfettered in the cultivation world for so many years, he had never lost in the hands of anyone. How could he be so simple? Yu Qianqiu did not speak at the side. He looked at Nongzhu in a new light. He did not expect Nongzhu to protect him when he was facing 5 cultivators of the same level. This was completely different from Nongzhu, who was always at loggerheads with him. No wonder he was his master's old friend. He felt a little bit of respect for Nongzhu. When Rui looked at Yu Qianqiu in surprise, he had also heard of this guy here. It seemed that many people here had lost in his hands. It was said that the disciples of Bing Qingzi and Yin Baikong at the end of the crossing calamity stage had died in his hands, as well as the 2 disciples of Yan Ji in front of him. This guy really had a lot of enemies and all of them were top figures. He actually dared to leave the cultivation world of Wuxia and come here. The One Clan was the only country that did not send people to the cultivation world of Wuxia. Because when Lanfeng had been in seclusion for many years, the other members of the One Clan did not dare to make decisions without his consent. Therefore they did not participate in this matter. In this way, when Rui thought that the One Clan and Yu Qianqiu did not have any grievances. Of course, he did not know that Yu Qianqiu was Bai Changchun's disciple. Otherwise, the grievances of the previous generation would inevitably involve the next generation. The atmosphere at the scene was a little strange. Yan Ji and the others were hesitating whether to take action or not. It was not because they were afraid of Nongzhu, but because they were worried about the person behind Nongzhu. Xuxin was the most embarrassed. If she had not pulled them here, this would not have happened. I have a compromise. I don't know if you are willing to listen? Xuxin braced herself and said, I'm all ears. Hua Zongming smiled. In fact, he was most unwilling to make a move here. Dian Kingdom was his territory, and Dian City was the most prosperous and densely populated place in Dian Kingdom. Based on the cultivation of these people, if they were to make a move, the people in his territory would be the ones who would suffer. Xu looked at Yanji and said, "We are not in a hurry to solve this matter. Since Mr. Nongzhu said that he would not intervene after Yu Qianqiu leaves Dayang City, it is better to wait for Yu Qianqiu to leave Dayang City." "What if he never leaves Dayang City?" Yanji sneered. Yu Qianqiu finally spoke. He raised his eyebrows and said, "If I want to leave, how many people in the world can stop me?" Nongzhu glanced at him and thought, "You haven't learned your master's skills, but you have learned your master's arrogance." "When are you going to leave?" Hua Zongming asked with a smile. It was quite funny that he did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. "When it is time to leave, I will leave," Yu Qianqiu replied. Yanji immediately mocked, "What do you mean when it is time to leave? Once the news that you are in Dayang City spreads, Bing Qingzi and Yin Baikong will come to settle accounts with you. In such a dangerous situation, I am afraid you will always have an excuse not to leave." "Old man Yanji, you don't have to provoke me," Yu Qianqiu said proudly. "You soul formation experts can't stay in Dayang City every day. I have a word of advice for you. Don't send disciples at the tribulation passing stage here, lest I kill more people." Yanji's face darkened. These words were a bit harsh. The two disciples who died in the hands of Yu Qianqiu were at the tribulation passing stage. Pu Taidong snorted, "Young people really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You are only at the nascent soul stage, how dare you speak so arrogantly?" "It's not that I'm speaking arrogantly," Yu Qianqiu said indifferently, "it's just that I think no cultivator below the soul formation stage is my match. If I am number 2, no one dares to be number 1. I have already experienced this when I was in the wuxia cultivation world. In my eyes, no cultivator below the soul formation stage is an expert." Everyone's faces changed, including xianxia and Wenrui. These words were a provocation. It was clear that he did not care about cultivators below the soul formation stage. If it weren't for Nongzhu, they would have slapped him to death on the spot. Nongzhu rolled her eyes and was speechless. This guy was really arrogant. Once these words were spread, those who were not convinced would drown him with their spit. This was a challenge to the tribulation passing stage cultivators of every country. "Ah." Hua Zongming clapped his hands and laughed. "Little brother, you are really heroic. I have decided not to intervene for now. I believe that your words will spread throughout the cultivation world in a few days. I want to see how you will be the number 1 cultivator below the soul formation stage. I won't do it myself, but I'll spread what you've just said. Then I'll see how you'll die." "Since Brother Hua the host has said so, I won't intervene for now," Pu Taidong said jokingly. He also looked like he wanted to watch a good show. "Yes. This is now a matter for the younger generation. It's not good for us to intervene." Miao Hanyuan said to Yanji with a smile, "Brother Yin, if you bully the young, it's a bit too much. Why don't you see how the younger generation will settle it first?" "That's right." Mu Sang also nodded. "Brother Yin, I think so too. Sister Xuexen, what about you?" "Me?" Xuexen looked at Nongzhu and said, "I have no opinion. I will follow the opinions of my brothers." Yanji naturally understood what everyone meant. He immediately laughed and said, "Yu Qianqiu, I wanted to give you a quick death. Since you are looking for trouble, I will fulfill your wish. I will also do you a favor for Mr. Nongzhu." After that, he flew away. There was nothing more to say at this point. Of course, he wouldn't stay any longer. Hua Zongming and the others all cupped their hands at Nongzhu and also flew away. Only Xuexen said to Nongzhu helplessly before she left, "I really didn't mean it." As soon as they left, Nongzhu immediately poked Yu Qianqiu's forehead and scolded, "Is there something wrong with your head? They won't dare to touch you with me here. What are you trying to do? You are the one who has a problem with your head." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand away and said, "This is called goading. If I don't say this, even if old man Yanji doesn't make a move now, he'll still keep a close eye on me. I can't stand being watched by a master in the soul formation stage every day." "Goading?" Nongzhu scolded, "Goading is more like goading. You've goaded yourself into it, haven't you? When the time comes, all the cultivators in the crossing calamity stage will come one after another. Let's see how you will deal with them." "Who the hell will deal with them? They are not my family members. I will kill every one of them. I will kill every pair of them until they don't dare to come." Yu Qianqiu sneered. He thought to himself, "I am not afraid of cultivators in the crossing calamity stage. I have more than 1,000 cultivators in the crossing calamity stage who are good at fighting. Who dares to compete with me in numbers? Fine. As long as you leave Dayang City, I don't care. I want to see how many people you can kill." Nongzhu looked disappointed. "Damn it. How dare you say that? If it weren't for you, would my fake identity have been exposed? Since I can't play dirty, I will play hard. Who is afraid of who? Yu Qianzhou said grumpily, I will kill as many as they come. When Rui was speechless when he saw the two of them openly discussing killing in front of him. He was thinking of sending a message to the Wen family to restrain them from joining in the fun. He would consider it as giving Mr. Nongzhu face. Otherwise, he would really send 2 cultivators in the last stage of the crossing calamity stage to teach this arrogant boy a lesson. When Rui didn't want to listen to Yu Qianzhou's bragging anymore, he said goodbye and left the yard. Nongzhu also landed on the swing angrily and took a nap. Yu Qianzhou knew that he was doing this for his own good. He didn't want to quarrel with him anymore. When he walked to the door of the room, he stopped as if he thought of something. He walked back to the swing, grabbed the rope and gently swung it. Nongzhu opened his eyes and looked at him. He said, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. What do you want to say? Yu Qianzhou didn't mind that his words were sarcastic. He said bluntly, I have a favor to ask of you. Nongzhu sat on the swing. Although it was comfortable to be swung, he didn't show any mercy. You are known as the most powerful person in the world below the soul formation stage. Do you still need to ask me for something? When you leave, help me bring Farong to Obedient Sky Island. If my master doesn't want her to stay, help me bring her to your purple bamboo forest. Just treat it as letting her accompany Zi. Yu Qianzhou slowly said. He didn't want to send Farong away. The key was that he was afraid that something might happen to her in the current situation. He wanted to send Farong directly to Utopia, but he hadn't thought of how to explain it to Chu Pinger. No woman would be willing to share a man with another woman, right? He was feeling very conflicted. He liked all these women and wanted them all, but he didn't want to hurt them. After thinking about it, he couldn't think of a perfect solution. It was really a headache. He had to stop them from seeing each other for the time being. Farong? Nongzhu was stunned and pointed to the room. Is she the mortal girl who slept with you? What you said is so unpleasant. It simply tarnishes Mr. Nongzhu's elegant reputation in the world of cultivation. Yu Qianzhou pushed the rope and swung the swing. He said, she is not a mortal. She is also a cultivator in the middle stage of bearing essence. She is also a cultivator? Is it possible? Nongzhu began to doubt his judgment. He had been wrong these days. Yu Qianzhou didn't hide it from him. I made some restraining breath pills. After taking them, others can't easily see through my cultivation. Restraining breath pills? I've heard of it. It seems to have been lost. I didn't expect you to be able to make it. Nongzhu suddenly became interested. A sudden pressure was generated and the swing immediately stopped moving. He reached out and said, give me a few pills. Let me go and scare your master. No problem. I'll give you a bottle for you to play with. But you have to agree to my conditions first. Yu Qianzhou said. Nongzhu jumped off the swing and looked at him while pinching his chin. This guy has 7 orifices exquisite pill and restraining breath pills. They are all lost treasures. It seems that he really got the true inheritance of the Dan Grandmaster. I wonder if he has any other treasures with him. I am a cultivator in the middle stage of deification. Do you want me to run errands with a bottle of restraining breath pills? Nongzhu pretended to be angry. You want to blackmail me? Yu Qianzhou sneered. Zi took a priceless treasure from me. I didn't even say a word. Now you want to blackmail me? Fine. I don't need your help. You either ask Zi to return the priceless treasure to me, or you give it to me in spirit stones. I'm not picky. Chapter 482. Zi took your priceless treasure? How come I've never heard her mention it? Nongzhu asked suspiciously, don't try to fool me. What is it? It's very precious. There's only one of it in the whole world. Yu Qianzhou said bitterly, I used countless demon cultivators and ghost cultivators in the demon ghost realm. I searched the entire demon ghost realm and collected some rare spiritual herbs to refine a Rui pill. Rui pill? Nongzhu was shocked. The Rui pill you mentioned, is it the one that can keep one's appearance forever? It's more than that. After taking it, it can cleanse one's muscles and marrow, and one will no longer be afraid of any poison in the world. Yu Qianzhou covered his face and cried, it took me a lot of effort to refine one, but I didn't expect that Zi would take it. I want to cry but no tears will come out. I'm so sad. Then he suddenly raised his head and said, do you think this Rui pill is priceless? Do you think it can be bought with money? I don't need your help. You have to pay me back for the Rui pill. Is it true? Nongzhu asked weakly. Yu Qianzhou immediately shouted, you can ask Zi whether it's true or not. She has taken it and I don't know whether it's true or not. Don't play dumb. Pay me back. He stretched out his hand. Nongju was stunned for a while. She didn't expect her daughter to have such a great opportunity to take the Rui pill. It seemed that her trip to Huaxia was not in vain. When she came to herself, she slapped his hand away and said embarrassedly, "Since Ziyi has taken it, I'm afraid she has already refined it into nothing. How can I pay you back?" Thinking of the day when Ziyi bullied Yu Qianzhou on Shantian Island, he had already associated the scene of Ziyi forcibly snatching the Rui pill from Yu Qianzhou and then swallowing it. Yu Qianzhou wanted to cry but no tears came out. After that he was bullied by a woman but he couldn't say it. "I don't care. Neither of you father and daughter are good people." Yu Qianzhou's expression was ferocious as he said, "If you can't take out anything to compensate me, I'll just go all out and complain to my master. I'll say that you two father and daughter conspired to steal my Rui pill." There. Nongju coughed and waved her hand. "It's just a magic pill. All right. Let bygones be bygones. I won't argue with you anymore. I'll bring your woman back to you on the way. There's no need to disturb your master for such a small matter. He's very busy with Nanming right now, so let's not disturb him." Yu Qianzhou had a miserable look on his face. He still wanted to say something to maximize his benefits. Nongju suddenly clapped her hands and said, "I almost forgot something very important to you. I have to tell you about it." "What is it?" Yu Qianzhou was stunned. "Boy, you're too young to play with me." Nongju saw that she had successfully changed the topic. She coughed and said, "You know your situation in the cultivation world. Let me ask you, how much did your master tell you about the masters in the Huashan realm?" "No." Yu Qianzhou shook his head. "Didn't your master tell you anything when he taught you?" Nongju asked curiously. Yu Qianzhou thought for a while and replied, "No, he told me to comprehend it on my own." Nongju was stunned and said, "Did you figure out everything you learned by yourself?" Yu Qianzhou scratched his head. Now that he thought about it, it seemed that since he joined the cultivation world, the three masters that he had been apprenticed to did not teach him much. Whatever was randomly thrown to him he would treat it as a treasure just like a dog seeing a bone. He worked hard to learn while bleeding and sweating. He walked step by step in constant failures and attempts. Among the three masters, xianxia was the one who cared the most about him. Unfortunately, he was killed by the Daluo sect not long after he gave him an introductory book. Guan Weiwu of the Fuxian Island was a different story. He was taught by his master and cultivation depended on himself. He did not even teach him anything. He wanted to learn the guiyuan swordplay, but he could not count on him. Therefore he tried to practice blindly. As a result, he made a mess of the guiyuan swordplay. After he mastered it, he did not know if it was still the guiyuan swordplay. As for Bai Changchun, he was a big shot. He seemed to think that his apprentice should be as talented as him. He talked a lot of mysterious words and in short he asked Meng Qi to comprehend it. Fortunately he gave him the animal play to practice, but he did not know how effective it was. "Master's advice has benefited me a lot." Yu Qianzhou smiled faintly. He could not say that his master did not teach him anything, could he? The person in front of him was his master's best friend. If his master heard this, he did not know what his master would think. In fact, he did not want to tell anyone about the hardships he had experienced along the way. It was not something that could be explained in a few sentences. If he said too much, people might think that he was pretentious. Only he knew how much he had sacrificed. Some things should be buried in the heart. This was his greatest wealth. He comforted himself by saying that he should not show his wealth. He would rather let others see the arrogant, domineering, cruel and vicious Yu Qianzhou in the cultivation world. The injured Yu Qianzhou would not let him show his face in the cultivation world. It was better to be a domineering powerhouse than a pitiful person who complained miserably. He thought so and did so. He felt very good about himself and there was nothing bad about it. Nongju keenly caught the faint and indescribable bitterness on his face when he said this. She moved her mouth but some words did not come out. They were all men. There were some things in common as long as they understood it in their hearts. But there was one thing that Nongju had to admire by Changchun. The mysterious skills of Yu Qianzhou were not simple. They had great potential. If Yu Qianzhou's skills were all achieved by self-understanding, then Bai Changchun really had a good eye for people. It was impossible for a random disciple to have such a high power of understanding. He should be carefully selected. But he did not know that Yu Qianzhou had never thought that he had a good power of understanding. He had always thought that he was a very stupid person. Otherwise he would not have been killed at a young age in his previous life. So he had been whipping himself to work harder and harder. Diligence could make up for it. Nongzhu stopped trying to fool him and asked solemnly, "Have you heard of the 3 souls and 7 spirits?" "Yes." Yu Qianqiu nodded seriously and said, "Is the 3 souls and 7 spirits related to the Huaxian realm?" "Of course it's related. If it's not, why would I talk to you about it?" Nongzhu said calmly, "The 3 souls are the heaven soul, the earth soul, and the life soul. The 7 spirits are Tianchong, Linghui, Qi, Li, Jingjing, and Ing. Every normal person has the 3 souls and 7 spirits. Of course, ordinary people can't detect the 3 souls and 7 spirits in their bodies like cultivators." "You mean that cultivators can detect the 3 souls and 7 spirits in their bodies?" Yu Qianqiu subconsciously touched his chest and said in astonishment, "How come I have never felt the 3 souls and 7 spirits in my body?" There was something to learn, so his current image was that of a respectful and good student. Nongzhu glanced at him and thought, "It's not all luck that this guy can get to where he is today." She snorted and said, "You wish. Even I can only detect the 3 souls and 4 spirits. Do you want to see the 3 souls and 7 spirits with your current cultivation? You must be dreaming. Only those who have reached the last stage of Huaxian realm can see the 3 souls and 7 spirits. You can only see the life soul of the 3 souls." "Oh." Yu Qianqiu was surprised and said, "I've never seen my life soul." "Bullshit. How did you reach the Yuanying realm without seeing your life soul?" Nongzhu scolded. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and giggled. He bowed and said, "I really don't understand. Please teach me." As he spoke, he walked to the swing, pulled off the hem of his long gown, wiped it on the swing and said with a smile, "Please sit down. You can lie down and talk slowly. I'll swing for you." Nongzhu looked at his exposed trousers and was stunned. Then she took the opportunity and said, "Old man? Do I look very old?" Yu Qianqiu repeatedly waved his hands and smiled apologetically, you're not old at all. You're handsome and elegant, there's no one in the world who can compare to you. You look even younger than me, even younger than me." "That's true." Nongzhu touched his chin and lay down on the swing. He looked at Yu Qianqiu, who had lost the front hem of his robe, and said, "Boy, do you always flatter people? I think you're very good at it." No. If you want me to flatter them, they have to be qualified like you." Yu Qianqiu smiled and gently shook the swing for him. He said, "You said my cultivation can see the life soul. Is it the yuanying in my body?" Nongzhu asked, "Do you know why mortals get sick easily but cultivators don't?" "I don't know. Please tell me." Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "The main reason why mortals get sick is that their souls are invaded by external evils. Their souls are unstable and their bodies will show various symptoms of exhaustion. Some people, because of regular exercise, strengthen their bodies and strengthen the stability of their souls. Because their souls are stable, it's difficult for external evils to invade their souls. That's why they seem to have stronger resistance than ordinary people." Nongzhu said with a smile, "Let me give you an example. There's a person who exercises regularly and a weak scholar. Both of them eat a poisonous food by mistake. You will discover a very interesting thing. Even if the person who exercises regularly eats more and is poisoned more deeply, it is usually the weak scholar who dies first. On the other hand, the person who exercises regularly can persevere longer. Perhaps he can even wait until someone comes to save him. That's the advantage of a stable soul." "Damn it. That seems to be the case. But it should be because of good physical fitness and strong resistance. There's no scientific basis for your statement." Yu Qianqiu asked, "Those who exercise regularly are those who practice martial arts in the secular world." Chapter 483. Practicing martial arts in the secular world or cultivation among cultivators is a way to improve the stability of the soul. But the progress of the latter is incomparable to that of the former. Nongzhu tapped on the armrest of the rattan chair with her slender fingers and said leisurely, "It's not unreasonable to cultivate step by step. The main purpose of the qi refining stage is to nourish the body with spirit stones until the body can bear the tempering." "Tempering? How to do that? I haven't." Yu Qianqiu said anxiously, as if he was worried that he had missed something good. "Tempering is the Zhuji realm. You haven't gone through the Zhuji realm?" Nongzhu turned around and said indifferently, "Don't tell me you directly jumped from the qi refining stage to the yuanying stage." Yu Qianqiu smiled embarrassedly, "So it's the Zhuji realm." Yes. How could I directly jump to the yuanying stage?" Nongzhu rolled her eyes at him and closed her eyes again. She said, "The cultivation of the qi refining stage is to prepare for the Zhuji realm. Otherwise you will die if you force it. If you don't believe me, you can bring a mortal here and let him take a foundation-laying pill. I'm sure the pill is more poisonous than poison and he will die immediately. Xianxia didn't doubt this. He had personally experienced the pain of the Zhuji realm. Ordinary people couldn't bear it at all. A foundation-laying pill would definitely kill them. After stepping into the foundation establishment stage, you've truly stepped into the doorstep of cultivation. What is the Zhuji realm? The Zhuji realm is to lay a good foundation for cultivation, which is also very important. Otherwise, it is impossible to extract the 3 souls and 7 spirits from the body to form the core. Nongzhu opened one eye and waved a finger at Xianxia. She said, without the qi refining stage in the Zhuji realm, an ordinary person will definitely die if he forcibly extracts the 3 souls and 7 spirits. Because once the soul leaves the blood, flesh and meridians of the ordinary person, the person is already dead. You mean, after cultivating to the Zhuji realm, the core in the body is condensed by the 3 souls and 7 spirits? Xianxia asked curiously. He had never heard of such a thing before. So this was what core formation was all about. It seemed there were some things that were difficult for people at other levels to know. To be more precise, core formation is turning the formless into the tangible. It's condensing the 3 souls and 7 spirits in the body into tangible objects. Nongzhu smiled leisurely and said, bearing essence is like incubating an egg. When the egg hatches and matures, your nascent soul will break out of the shell. In other words, a life soul. Now do you know what a life soul is? So that's how it is. The life soul is indeed the nascent soul. Xianxia asked eagerly, what about the other 2 souls and 7 spirits? Where are they? That's not right. Didn't you say that core formation is formed by the condensation of the 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls? Why did it only hatch a life soul and nothing else? You can't become fat with just one bite. If I want to see the other 2 souls and 7 spirits, I naturally have to continue cultivating. Nongzhu raised her hand and pointed at Xianxia's abdomen and said, the life soul you see now is actually the 3 souls and 7 physical souls in one body. Have you noticed that your nascent soul is like an unconscious fetus, forever in a deep sleep? Yes. I've never seen it open its eyes. Xianxia nodded and said, it's right that you haven't seen it open its eyes. Once it opens its eyes, it means that it has woken up and your cultivation has reached the crossing calamity stage. Nongzhu explained, your current cultivation is still in the nascent soul stage, which is the stage when the nascent soul fetus matures. When it wakes up and you enter the crossing calamity stage, that is the growth period of the baby. And the final stage of the crossing calamity stage is the sign that the baby has grown into an adult. Xianxia said, that is to say, even at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage I can only see the life soul but not the other souls? Yes. Nongzhu nodded slightly and said, why is the life soul called the life soul? Because it is the first life soul to be born, and the other 2 souls and 7 physical souls will also be born from it. When you can see the life soul in your dantian giving birth to the heavenly soul, it means that the nascent soul in your body has grown up and can reproduce. At the same time, it means that you have entered the early stage of the Huashan realm. So, the heavenly soul is the sign that the cultivation has reached the Huashan realm? Xianxia smacked his lips and looked like he was drooling. Isn't it said that the divine realm is the divine realm? There are geniuses and gods. It can also be said that your cultivation has entered a new world and supported your own sky. That's why it is called the Huashan realm. Nongzhu looked at his greedy face and said with a smile, when you break through the Huashan realm and look back, you will find that there is a huge difference between the final stage of the crossing calamity stage and the early stage of the Huashan realm. Of course. Otherwise, why is it called the Huashan realm? Xianxia smiled bitterly and said, but I am still far from the Huashan realm. I don't know if there is any hope. If you continue to make trouble in the cultivation world, it is not impossible for you to survive. Nongzhu joked, with the speed of your cultivation, you have saved a lot of time compared to others. If you can break through the final stage of the crossing calamity stage before you are 100 years old, you will have hundreds of years to slowly struggle. I believe that even a pig can climb to the Huashan realm in a few hundred years. Of course, the premise is that you will not be killed in these hundreds of years. But according to your situation, it will be difficult for you to live until you are 100 years old. Nongzhu did not forget to add. Xianxia wanted to scold her on the spot, but when he thought that he still had questions to ask her, he could only shut up and curse in his heart. Damn it, do you think I am like you? Without Zi, I have no worries and can go wherever I want. I have so many people I love, how can I just leave them alone? It is easy for me to plan for myself. It is not a problem for me to cultivate in seclusion every day. But how can I watch my loved ones die of old age? I want to enjoy immortal happiness together with everyone when I become immortal. Forget it, there is no way to talk to you, a person who eats and waits for death. Isn't there a middle and late stage in the Huaxian realm? Will the rest of the souls come out one by one in these 3 stages? Yu Qianqiu asked. Something like that. Nongzhu nodded slightly and said, if there is heaven, there will be earth. Once the heaven soul comes out, the earth soul will be separated from the life soul, and then the first soul will be Tianqiu. When the heaven soul, the earth soul, and the first soul are gathered, it will be the peak of the early stage of the Huaxian realm. When the second soul is gathered, the third soul is the spirit, and the fourth soul is the peak of the middle stage of the Huaxian realm. When the fifth soul is gathered, the sixth soul is the essence, and the seventh soul is the peak of the late stage of the Huaxian realm. The life soul will guard the body and not be confused with the others. The Huaxian realm. It's really unfathomable, 2F** king unfathomable. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his hands and said, now that you can see the 3 souls and 4 souls, you have reached the peak of the middle stage of the Huaxian realm. That's nothing. Nongzhu said disapprovingly, you are far worse than your master. Your master has 3 souls and 7 souls. I'm afraid he has reached the stage of fusing souls. Fusing souls? Yu Qianqiu licked his lips and said, what's that? A stage higher than the Huaxian realm, ascending to the immortal world. Nongzhu pointed to the sky, shook her head and sighed. When the cultivation of 3 souls and 7 souls is completed, starting from the 7 souls, they will be fused back to the life soul according to the order in which they were separated. Once the 7 souls are fused back to the life soul, he can ascend to the immortal world. Then every time a soul is fused back, his strength in the immortal world will be improved by 1 level, which is about the same as the Huaxian realm. As for what exactly happened, no one is very clear about it. It's all just a legend. Damn. Becoming an immortal. Yu Qianqiu covered his chest excitedly, as if becoming an immortal was right in front of him. Nongzhu turned to look at him and sneered, why are you so excited? You don't even know when you will break through to the tribulation stage, and you are still dreaming about becoming an immortal. Isn't your dream too far away? This basin of cold water immediately poured on him, and he was immediately brought back to reality. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly and said, I'm just dreaming about it. If I have a dream, I have a goal to strive for. I'll just work hard. It's good enough that you can reach your master's level. Nongzhu sighed, becoming an immortal? I don't know how those ancient cultivators did it. Yu Qianqiu sighed dejectedly, that's true. I don't know when my master can fuse the 7 souls. He swung on the swing weakly. I've also asked your master about this, but your master is very secretive and won't say a word about it. Nongzhu spread out her hands and said, I guess he felt that there was no hope for the fusion, or he wouldn't have gone to the East Holy Land to seek excitement. Yu Qianqiu nodded in agreement and then swung on the swing again and said to himself, if the 3 souls and 7 spirits are fused again, I wonder what kind of realm his cultivation will reach? Nongzhu suddenly gave him a thumbs up and said without turning her head, congratulations. It is said that when you reach that level of cultivation besides the solid life soul, the other 2 souls and 7 spirits can transform into 3 heads and 6 arms outside the body to fight against the enemy together. That is the cultivation of an immortal emperor in the immortal world. You can pull him down and sit on his seat. If you are comfortable, don't forget to come down to the mortal world to help me. I will be very grateful. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly and said, don't insult me. 3 heads and 6 arms? Is that Neza? Neza is the cultivation of an immortal emperor? He suddenly thought of the 3rd Prince Neza in the myth of his previous life and was stunned. Who is Neza? Can he have 3 heads and 6 arms? Nongzhu sneered and said, don't tell me you know an immortal emperor. Of course not. I'm just imagining. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled. You're really imaginative. Then what else are you thinking about? Nongzhu asked casually. But Yu Qianqiu also answered casually, I'm thinking what is the cultivation of an immortal emperor? Yes, there is a saying about it. It's said that it's a god. Nongzhu waved her hand and pointed to the sun in the west and said, it's said that after the 3 souls and 7 spirits are fused again, they can be divided again. But at that time, the 3 souls and 7 spirits will be released to cultivate instead of staying inside the body. Each soul can become a son. There is an old legend. It seems that a god's cultivation has reached the realm where he can release all 3 souls and 7 spirits. As a result, 10 suns appeared in the sky and there was no night in the world, only day. The common people in the mortal world couldn't stand it. At this time a god called I suddenly appeared. He pulled his magic bow and shot down 9 suns. So there was only 1 sun left in the sky. Yu Qianqiu stood rooted to the spot. Chapter 484. Hou-Yi shoots the sun. It's actually Hou-Yi shoots the sun. It's actually Hou-Yi shoots the sun. Yu Qianqiu kept murmuring to himself, and he seemed to be in a trance. He didn't read many books in his previous life, but he was very familiar with the story of Hou-Yi shooting the sun, which was known to every household. Normally he wouldn't even think of this kind of fairy tale, but now he heard someone say that Hou-Yi shot the sun in another world. What was the connection between these two stories? He already had an illusion, and he couldn't tell whether he was in his previous life or this life. Nongzhu said without turning her head, "It's a great god named Yi who shoots the sun, but I don't know whether his name is Hou-Yi or not. You won't tell me that you know Yi Shen who shoots the sun, will you?" Yu Qianqiu didn't hear what she said at all and was still murmuring, "It's actually Hou-Yi who shoots the sun." Nongzhu suddenly turned around and was a little surprised to see him like this. Listening closely, she realized that he was repeating the same sentence over and over again. Nongzhu slightly narrowed her eyes, and no one knew what she was thinking. Her slender fingers tapped on the armrest of the rattan chair, and she didn't disturb him, but quietly waited for him to come back to his senses. However, as he waited, the moon was high up in the sky and the night sky was full of stars. Suddenly, a shrill quacking sound of an old turtle flew across the sky. Yu Qianqiu trembled and came back to his senses. He subconsciously raised his head and glanced at the old turtle that flew across the bright moon. His eyes fell on the beautiful moon and he couldn't move any more. Suddenly the 2 words Xianxia came out of his mouth. Then he shouted again and reached out his hand to grab Nongzhu, who was sitting on the rattan chair. He directly grabbed Nongzhu's clothes on her chest, lifted her up and asked excitedly, "Does that great god Hou-Yi have a wife named Xianxia?" Nongzhu was a little confused. She was caught by him just like that and was tormented by him like crazy. She directly burst out a curse, F***CKU. "What do you mean?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Slowly he began to recover. Nongzhu immediately cursed, "Bastard, if you don't let me go, I'll teach you how to hold chopsticks with your feet. Then you'll know what I mean." Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses and was shocked. He quickly let go and looked around, only to realize that it was already dark. Immediately he said in surprise, "Why is it suddenly dark?" "Bastard, you're thinking about someone else's wife. The moment you think about it, you think about the sky turning dark. You still have the nerve to ask me?" Nongzhu said angrily, "Damn it! How dare you touch me? I haven't suffered such a loss for 1,000 years. If it weren't for that Rui pill, I would have let you know why the sky is so dark today." Yu Qianqiu's brain was still a little numb. He only heard the first part but not the second part. With a puzzled look he asked, "I want someone else's wife? No. I've never wanted to be someone else's wife." Nongzhu opened her mouth. Today was her bad luck. She didn't want to argue with him anymore. She said weakly, "You said that the wife of the great god Yi is called xuanhuan. God knows what kind of crazy you are." "Hou-Yi's wife? Are you always hungry?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a moment, then he shouted excitedly, "That's right, no wrong. F***CK, why is it so hard to talk to you? Hou-Yi's wife is called Xianxia, Xianxia as in 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 Xianxia. Do you understand?" He said it effortlessly, but Nongzhu had a hard time listening to him. Her eyes were a little numb and she was almost confused by him again. Who cares what he says? I'll scold him first. "Bastard, what kind of nonsense are you spouting? Are you even speaking human language?" Yu Qianqiu didn't mind. He asked excitedly, "Who cares what he's saying? As long as you can understand him, it's fine. Have you heard of Xianxia?" "I'll be damned if I can understand." Nongzhu was speechless again. She rubbed her face and answered seriously, "Who is Xianxia?" "Hou-Yi's wife, of course." Yu Qianqiu's eyes sparkled. Nongzhu rolled her eyes and shouted, "Hou-Yi's wife has nothing to do with me. Didn't you say that God Yi's wife is called xuanhuan? Let me correct you. She should be called Xianxia. Since you can say it, you must have heard of it. Tell me quickly." Yu Qianqiu said eagerly. The feeling of living 2 lives was not good. Suddenly he found the traces of 2 worlds crossing at a certain point. That feeling. He felt a little excited as if he had met an old friend in a foreign land. "What the F***CK?" Nongzhu couldn't help but burst out again. She pointed at Yu Qianqiu's chest and said, "There's something wrong with your brain. It was you who told me that God Yi's wife is called Xuanhuan. How come it's me who said it?" "Hey, don't go back on your words. Both my ears clearly heard you say it. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and immediately patted his chest and said, as long as you tell me what you know about xuanhuan, I'll give you a 7 orifices exquisite pill. I won't go back on my word. Nongzhu was stunned. She thought, is there something wrong with this guy's brain? Whatever, I'll get the pill first. If there's really a problem, I'll ask Bai Changchun to cure it. She rolled her eyes and nodded, yes. God Yi's wife is called xuanhuan. I said it. Give me the pill. Then she stretched out her hand. What's the hurry? Yu Qianqiu was so happy that he asked without thinking, tell me how you know xuanhuan first. Bullshit. If I had the ability to know God Yi's wife, I wouldn't be standing here talking nonsense with you. Nongzhu said with a serious look. She stared at Yu Qianqiu and said, there's something wrong with your brain, isn't there? I'm being too hasty. Yu Qianqiu said very sincerely, I mean, I want you to tell me what the legend is about God Yi and his wife, Xuanhuan. Nongzhu pinched her chin and thought, a god who can shoot the sun, what kind of legend could he have with his wife? Fearing that he couldn't remember, Yu Qianqiu pointed to the bright moon and reminded, the legend of Xuanhuan and the moon, there is a palace on the moon, what's its name again? Nongzhu wanted to make up a legend to fool him with a pill first. Being reminded by him, she was suddenly confused. After a pause, she said hesitantly, the moon palace? Wrong. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and reminded again, there are 3 words in total. The first word is guang, with the word, guang. Think again. With the word, guang? Nongzhu, who was in the middle stage of Huashan realm, was now full of question marks. She looked at the moon with a dumbfounded expression, and then tried to answer in a weak voice, Guangyu Palace? Guangming Palace? Guangyu Palace? Guangyuan Palace. Hearing a lot of palaces, Yu Qianqiu shook his head and denied them one by one. Nongzhu was tormented until her mouth was dry. Finally, she couldn't help shouting, you know what palace it is, why did you ask me? What palace is it? Xuanhuan Palace. After Yu Qianqiu announced the correct answer, he asked again, Xuanhuan raised a small animal and planted a tree outside the Xuanhuan Palace. What kind of animal did she raise? What kind of tree did she plant? Nongzhu opened her mouth and then her face twitched. She pointed at him with her trembling body and said harshly, you brat, how dare you fool me? Go to hell. Nongzhu suddenly came to a realization. Her intuition told her that this brat was usually so cunning, how could he ask such a stupid question? It was obvious that he was teasing her with the elixir, but she was like a dog seeing a bone, so she moved forward eagerly. Bang! He kicked out. Yu Qianqiu let out a scream, and he flew to the flowers 5 or 6 meters away. Shit! This flower has thorns. Yu Qianqiu's scream immediately came from the flowers. Nongzhu, are you crazy? Is there something wrong with your brain? Is there something wrong with my brain? Nongzhu pointed at her nose and then pointed at the person who climbed up from the flowers and said, if I continue to talk to you, no problem will become a problem. Bastard. How dare you fool me? You don't want to live, do you? Damn you, there are so many thorns, my ass. A figure jumped out from the flowers. Under the moonlight, Yu Qianqiu tiptoed as he scolded, Nongzhu, just you wait. One day I'll throw you into a pile of thorns and enjoy you to your heart's content. Stubborn. I will let you enjoy it now. Nongzhu snorted coldly and teleported to his back. She kicked him in the buttocks as fast as a sudden clap of thunder. Ah! Yu Qianqiu screamed again and he was kicked into the air. He crashed through the door and rolled into the room. Inside, there was a sound of tables and chairs being overturned. Inside the room, Zhang Peng and Farong, who had long been in tears, hurried over to help him up. Yu Qianqiu bared his teeth and pointed at Nongzhu. Originally, he wanted to curse out loud, but when he thought that a wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him, he forced the words out of his mouth, you're ruthless. We'll see. Zhang Peng closed the door. As soon as the door was closed, Yu Qianqiu ran to the bedroom and took off all his clothes. He ran to the bright part of the room naked and stood in a straight line. He said, Farong, come and help me remove the thorns. The old man is so cruel. He sealed my dantian and deliberately made me suffer. When Nongzhu kicked him, she had already sealed his dantian with her hidden strength. Otherwise, with his cultivation of the original infant stage, the thorns could not hurt him. It took him a while to remove all the thorns. This injury was not a problem. He was not so weak. The key was that Nongzhu had secretly sealed his dantian. Farong and Zhang Peng could not remove it at all. For a cultivator, his dantian would be in danger at any time if his dantian was sealed. It seemed that he had to ask Nongzhu to be merciful. Zhang, go and have a rest. I am fine. After sending Zhang Ping away, he comforted Furong and told her not to worry. Yu Qianzhou walked to the swing outside slowly. He looked at Nongzhu, who was lying on the rattan chair and staring at him with a sneer. He coughed awkwardly and shook the rope. He looked up and sighed, "The moon is nice today." It is nice. Do you want me to send you to the Moon Palace to see Xuanhuan? Nongzhu sneered. Chapter 485. He finally realized that when this guy needed help, he would pretend to be a coward. When he tore off his gown and scratched the rattan chair, it was so touching. Once he stopped asking for help, he could turn around and pretend to be his father. He turned hostile faster than anyone else. Now he came to show off again. It would be strange if he could be nice to him. Well, you know I'm in a dangerous situation now. You sealed my dantian. If someone comes to kill me now, I can't protect myself. You think? Yu Qianzhou smiled apologetically. You want me to remove the inhibition formation in your dantian? Nongzhu shook her head and said, no way. Don't. Yu Qianzhou pulled the rope and said, if something happens to me, you can't explain it to my master. What a joke. If you're killed by others, it's because you're not as good as them. What do you think I need to explain to your master? Nongzhu sneered and said, if I kill you with my own hands, it's a bit unreasonable. But I'm happy to see you killed by others. Yu Qianzhou didn't believe what she said. If she really wanted to see him die, she didn't have to protect him at the risk of falling out with Hua Zongming and the others. She was just saying it out of anger. Yu Qianzhou gritted his teeth and said, 7 orifices exquisite pill, can you remove it? Bastard, I've been waiting for you to say this. Nongzhu laughed and climbed up from the rattan chair. She walked to Yu Qianzhou and stretched out 2 fingers saying, 1 is not enough. Z and I will take 2. Yu Qianzhou frowned and said, you're too greedy. There are only 9 pills in 1 furnace. You want 2? Black or white? If you don't give me 2, I guess you won't dare to leave this door for the rest of your life. It's up to you. Nongzhu pretended to be calm. Then she patted her forehead and said, I forgot to tell you that sealing your dantian is my exclusive skill. Even if your master were here, he would have to spend a lot of effort to do it. Don't dispel it recklessly. Don't blame me if you destroy your dantian by force. Yu Qianzhou pointed at him and said bitterly, to think that I trusted you so much. Otherwise, how could I have given you the chance to seal my dantian? Alright, I guess I'm unlucky. 2 it is. I agree. Nongzhu laughed and said, why didn't you say yes earlier? Why did you have to talk so much nonsense? As she said this, she pinched out a messy finger incantation and slapped it into Yu Qianzhou's abdomen with several white lights. Yu Qianzhou let out a sigh of relief as the xuanhuan in his body began to circulate once more. The feeling of having one's fate controlled by someone else was too terrifying, even more terrifying than death itself. It was the feeling that he wanted to get rid of the most in his life, and that was why he had fought so hard to get rid of the shackles that bound him. Nongzhu stretched out her hand and said, am I good enough? Work first, then take the items. Now give me the spirit pills. Do you think I'll give it to you just because you said so? Yu Qianzhou snorted inwardly and shrugged his shoulders. We'll talk about it later. Anyway, you're not in a hurry to use them. What do you mean? Nongzhu's face darkened. How dare you fool me? If I can seal you once, I can seal you again. It's useless even if you're unhappy. I don't have the spirit pills with me. Even if you seal me 10 times, I won't be able to give them to you. Yu Qianzhou said helplessly, if I carry such a precious thing with me and the news spreads, it will attract covetous eyes from others. Wouldn't I be seeking death then? You'd better not lie to me or I'll make you cry. Nongzhu squinted her eyes and said, where are the spirit pills? Tell me and I'll go and get them myself. That's fine. However, I have to make it clear. You can only take 2. You cannot touch the rest, Yu Qianzhou said seriously. Once you know where it is, it's not up to you to decide. Just wait and beg me. Nongzhu's face softened a little. She said, don't worry. I'm a man of my word. I'll only take what belongs to me. I won't touch other people's things. Damn. Those who say they're trustworthy are usually the most untrustworthy. I'm 100% sure of this. Yu Qianzhou thought for a while and nodded. Last time when I went to the Moon Clan with Zi, Xianghua Fairy wanted to introduce us to the Cultivation Alliance. I was worried that I would offend too many people and it would not be safe to bring the spirit pills to the Cultivation Alliance. So, I left the spirit pills with Xianghua Fairy. Hearing this, Nongzhu's face turned green. Her instinct told her that this guy was playing with her again. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental that the spirit pills were in Xianghua Fairy's hands? Yu Qianzhou continued as if nothing had happened. Of course, Xianghua Fairy doesn't know it's a spirit pill. You'd better not tell her when you go to get it. The fewer people who know about it, the better. By the way, the spirit pills are sealed with hell iron. It can block spiritual consciousness from seeing them. You need to use the secret code when you go to get it. Otherwise, Xianghua Fairy won't give it to you. There was a secret code? Nongzhu was a little surprised. She kind of believed him. Otherwise he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. She asked suspiciously, "What secret code?" Yu Qianzhou explained, "When you find her, you tell her to take the thing that Yu Qianzhou left with you. She will say, 'The heavenly king covers the earth tiger,' and you will say, 'The pagoda suppresses the river monster.' Then she will give it to you." Nongzhu's face twitched. She said in a low voice, "Why did you leave it with her?" "Because of you." Yu Qianzhou said in surprise. "You are talking nonsense again. It has nothing to do with me." Nongzhu stared at him. "There are 3 reasons." Yu Qianzhou counted on his fingers and said, "First, you didn't see how intimate Fairy Jasper was when she saw Z. I saw that the 2 of them looked so similar, so I felt that the 2 of them must be related. After that, I heard some clues from her words. Z should be the daughter she had with you. Don't be anxious. Let me finish." Nongzhu's face was gloomy. She put down her raised hand. Yu Qianzhou coughed and continued, "I am Z's friend. She won't say anything if I leave this thing with her. Second, the elixir is sealed by hell iron. My divine sense can't see what's inside. Thirdly, I believe that you, Mr. Nongzhu, have good taste as well. Those who are able to get into bed with you and give birth to children must be of good moral character." "Enough." Nongzhu turned sideways and said in a low voice, "You can get it by yourself later. Just remember that you owe me 2 elixirs. Don't try to renege." Yu Qianzhou patted his chest and said, "Don't worry. I live by my credit. You don't have to worry. Don't talk to me about your bullshit credit." Nongzhu shouted, "Go back to your woman. You like to play? I will play with you anytime." Yu Qianzhou was very happy. He cupped his hands and turned around to leave. But after a few steps, he frowned again. He came back and asked, "Senior Nongzhu, there is something I really want to know. I sincerely want to know." Nongzhu stared at the night sky in the distance. No one knew what she was thinking. She answered calmly, "Say it. About the legend about Yixin shooting the sun, how much do you know? Can you tell me everything you know?" Yu Qianzhou took a breath and said. For this legend, he suddenly had an indescribable expectation. He didn't know what he was expecting. It was vague and vague. Nongzhu turned around and said with her eyes shining, "You seem to be very interested in this." "What?" "Worship. I am fascinated by the worship of a powerful man." That was all he could say. No one would understand what happened in his previous life, and there was no need for him to say it. "I have only heard about this from the former torture master of the demon ghost region. He said that there was a great god named Yi who destroyed the 9 suns in the sky with 9 arrows in a row to save the world. I have been fascinated and asked him about it, but he only said that it was an old legend and shouldn't be taken seriously. That's all I know. As for the wife of Yixin you mentioned, I have never even heard of her, not to mention the palace, raising animals or planting trees." Nongzhu paused and said, "If you want to know more you can ask your teacher. As the current torture master he may know more than me." "I see." Yu Qianzhou let out a breath, nodded with disappointment and said, "I won't bother you any more." He turned around and left slowly. However, when he walked to the door, Nongzhu called him again, "Come back, I almost forgot to tell you one thing." Yu Qianzhou's eyes shone. He hurriedly ran back and asked, "Elder Nongzhu, do you remember any legend about Yixin? Don't mention Yixin to me again. I have told you everything I know." Nongzhu looked at him with puzzlement for a long while, as if there was something she couldn't figure out. Then she said, "You're too noisy. If you hadn't mentioned Shantian Island and your master just now, I would have forgotten about it. When I left Shantian Island, your teacher suddenly sent me a message and asked me to ask some questions for him. I will tell you everything I know." Yu Qianzhou immediately folded his hands and stood up respectfully. Nongzhu nodded and said, "Your teacher said that because of your low cultivation he was still worried about letting you travel alone. He asked me to ask you, which one do you think is more powerful, the fire magic or the water magic?" Well. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head and said, "I have fought with people many times and found that the water magic is almost useless when I meet masters. Instead, the fire magic always helps me win. So, the fire magic should be more powerful." Your master said that if you say that the power of fire and water arts is as great, then there's no need to say anything else. You won't be too worried about your ability to protect yourself when you travel around the various countries. Nongzhu sorted out her thoughts and continued, if you say the fire magic is more powerful than the water magic, he asked me to tell you something else. I will listen to your advice, teacher. Yu Qianzhou was a little excited. Although his teacher didn't talk much, once he opened his mouth, every word was like a gem, absolutely without any nonsense. Listen carefully to your teacher's original words. Nongzhu said, water and fire are two extremes. The operation of the way of heaven is about balance. Where there is yin, there must be yang. Therefore there is no such thing as fire being more powerful than water. If you think fire is more powerful than water, then you are totally wrong. The reason why you think so is that you haven't understood the mystery in it or you haven't used it well. As I said, if you use it well, you will be invincible. The key of the fire magic is to release fire and defend the enemy with yang. The water magic is yin, and yin and yang are opposite to each other. When fire is released, water is withdrawn. Only by releasing and withdrawing can you follow the way of heaven. Yes, that's what your teacher said. Nongzhu poked her head over and asked softly, what is your teacher talking about? I am confused. Do you know what it means? Tell me. When the fire is released, the water comes in. Yu Qianzhou murmured to himself with a dull expression. He didn't reply to Nongzhu and walked to the side of the flower bed alone. He raised his palm towards the flowers under the moonlight. I asked you a question. Nongzhu's voice stopped abruptly, and her eyes gradually widened. She saw the seedlings and flowers in the flower bed were rapidly withering. Chapter 486. There were a total of 3 flower beds in the yard, distributed on both sides and in the middle. Yu Qianzhou was facing the middle one. This flower bed was the largest, occupying nearly half of the yard, and there was a big tree in the middle. The flowers were delicate under the moonlight, and the green leaves were glowing faintly. However, all of this changed after Yu Qianzhou attacked with his palm. The color of life faded instantly. The flowers and green leaves withered and shrunk as if they were facing the cold winter. The big tree made a muffled sound and the withered leaves fell. Nongzhu had never seen such a phenomenon, and his face was full of disbelief. The leaves of the big tree fluttered, and the sound of rustling was endless. It did not take long for all the leaves to fall. The big tree had withered, and it showed its loftiness under the moonlight. Nongzhu turned his head slowly and looked at the young man beside him in horror. Yu Qianzhou looked calm and his palm was still in the air. He looked extremely serene under the moonlight, as if he was a god who controlled life, and grasped the growth rings of time with a snap of his fingers. If I want you to wither, how can you let flowers bloom, and how can you be lush and green? Nongzhu believed that with his cultivation, it was not a problem to turn the whole flower bed into powder in an instant. However, it was impossible for him to make the flowers and trees in the nursery grow rapidly across time and space without any effort. This was already a miracle. Nongzhu thought so. Only Yu Qianzhou himself knew that this had absolutely nothing to do with a miracle. It was just that his master's words reminded him. The power of the fire formula was to burn, and it was impossible for the water formula to submerge the enemy with water. Even if the water was turned into ice, the ice would be disintegrated in an instant, and it would be difficult to give the enemy a fatal blow. At that time he was thinking, stop? How can the water formula resist the enemy? His eyes fell on the flowers and trees, and he suddenly realized some common sense from his previous life. The bodies of animals and plants contained a lot of water. Without the support of water, it meant that they lost their lives. Since he could absorb the water elements from lakes and rivers, why couldn't he absorb the water elements from animals and plants? Thus, he activated the water incantation and enveloped the entire flower bed. Sure enough, as he had hoped, the thousands of flowers and trees did not have the slightest resistance, and were instantly sucked dry by his palm, turning into water elements and stored in his body. The flowers and trees in the flower bed also lost all signs of life in an instant. What a domineering spell. Yu Qianzhou looked calm on the surface, but he was deeply shocked by himself. He had used the water incantation many times. Other than feeling that it was miraculous, he really didn't feel that it was very powerful. He didn't expect that after changing the way he used it, it would actually be so overbearing. It was unbelievably overbearing. Yu Qianzhou now truly understood by Changchun's words, use it well and you will be invincible. At the same time he couldn't help but admire Bai Changchun. He had never practiced water arts before, but based on his own understanding of the heavenly Tao, he was able to speculate how to use water arts to unleash their power. The #1 expert in the world was indeed not someone to be trifled with. Just his ability to see through everything in the world was not something an ordinary person could compare with. Yu Qianzhou was sincerely convinced and a little touched. From Nongzhu's words he could tell that Bai Changchun's eyes were like torches. Obviously he had already guessed the mystery of the water incantation, but he had never told him personally. According to his style of doing things, he guessed that he wanted him to comprehend it. But because he was worried that he would encounter danger when he traveled among the countries, he used Nongzhu's words to enlighten him and help him. It was completely to let him have more skills to defend himself. Nongzhu casually picked up a withered flower branch and pinched it in her hand. Immediately it turned into powder. It was indeed dead without any signs of life. Nongzhu was dumbfounded. Boy, how did you do that just now? Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou sobered up and sighed slowly. He bowed piously to the direction of Shuntian Island and said, "Thank you, Master, for pointing out the right path and enlightening me." Then he bowed to Nongzhu and said, "Thank you, Master, for passing on the message." Nongzhu threw away the thing in her hand and patted the dust on her palm. She grabbed Yu Qianzhou's arm and asked curiously, "You mean, everything that happened just now was because of the few words I passed on to old Bai? There is such a big mystery hidden in these few words?" "Yes." Yu Qianzhou nodded and said with a smile, "To me these few words are like a golden bell. It is thought-provoking and has solved the puzzle that I have been puzzled for a long time." Nongzhu witnessed everything in front of her. She really could not imagine that just because of a few words, a Yuaning stage cultivator could immediately become so powerful. This pair of master and disciple was too amazing. She immediately muttered the words that Bai Changchun wanted her to pass on to old Bai. Then she asked suspiciously, "These few words are so powerful? Why didn't I hear it?" "Everyone can hear it. Then why would my master pass it on to me through your mouth?" Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, "I just learned a set of magic arts from my master's words. I don't know how powerful it is. Do you want to have a try?" "Let me have a try?" Nongzhu subconsciously looked at the withered flowerbed and said suspiciously, "Are you going to try it on me?" Yu Qianzhou smiled embarrassedly and said, "I just learned it so I don't know how powerful it is. Senior, you have a high cultivation level. I want to try it on you so that you can evaluate the power of my magic arts." Nongzhu glanced at the withered flowerbed again and thought that this magic art was a bit strange. Thinking that if she also became an old man in an instant, it would be very interesting. This thing could not become young again, right? She was shocked and coughed twice and said, "There is a big gap between our cultivation levels. It is useless to try it on me. You'd better find someone who has a similar cultivation level as you to try it." After saying that, she turned around and left. She didn't want to say anything more. Yu Qianzhou shouted, "Don't go. I'm afraid that my magic art is too powerful. If I try it on someone else, they will die. You have a high cultivation level, so it should be no problem." Hearing this, Nongzhu quickened her pace. She scolded in her heart, "Bastard, I know it is too powerful, but I still let you try it, unless there is something wrong with my head. Could it be that you are scared?" Yu Qianzhou shouted. Nongzhu, who walked to the swing, stopped and turned back with a sneer. "Are you kidding me? How can I be afraid of you, who is only in the Yuaning realm?" She added in her heart, "I'm afraid that your magic art is too strange. There is no need to take risks for something that I don't know the details of, and that is not good for me." Yu Qianzhou came over and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I won't delay you. I just want to try it casually. I want you to help me evaluate how useful it will be if I fight against an enemy." Nongzhu said coldly, "Go away, don't come near me, I want to rest. If you keep talking, don't blame me for sealing your dantian again. I won't release it for you no matter what." Yu Qianzhou was stunned, but he did not force her. He walked into the house ready to find someone else to try it. He probably did not know that Nongzhu cherished her appearance the most. Otherwise, she would not look like a middle-aged man at this age. She really spent a lot of cultivation to maintain it. In fact, Nongzhu was not afraid of the power of the magic art, but she was afraid that the magic art was too strange. It would turn her blue face into a white-haired old face, which was more painful than killing her. Therefore she simply chose to avoid it. She really did not dare to take the risk. He had wandered around the world and understood that there were many strange and mysterious things that could not be determined by the level of cultivation. The Prime Minister of Dayang Kingdom, Yin Wufeng, returned. Many people in the court sighed. Why did he come back? Those bandits who killed and robbed people were all good-for-nothings. Weren't they bloodthirsty? He did not cause any trouble, so why did he come back? In the eyes of others, Yin Wufeng's matter was a result that could be seen and guessed. People like the Emperor of Dayang Kingdom and those in the cultivation world were the ones who knew the truth. Of course, no one would announce such a thing to ordinary people. The matter gradually calmed down and Dayang Kingdom returned to normal. The martial arts competition for the Emperor's son-in-law that was postponed due to the attack on the Prime Minister's residence was once again organized in full swing. After all, it was not good to let the distinguished guests from various countries wait any longer. The entire Dayang city returned to its original liveliness. It was indeed lively, but it had to be lively. Xianxia's bold statement that he was the strongest in the world below the spirit-severing stage had already caused a huge uproar in various countries. There was a person called by Changchun who was the strongest in the world. It could not be helped. Even those spirit-severing experts had admitted it, so naturally, no one dared to have any objections. Now, a Xianxia had suddenly appeared and boasted shamelessly. Furthermore, he was a cultivator from wuxia. Most importantly, this person was only at the nascent soul stage. Although it was said that this person had a glorious battle record in wuxia's cultivation world, it did not mean that there was no one in the cultivation world who could make him talk nonsense. This could not be tolerated. Therefore, a large number of cultivators gathered in Dayang City to teach this fellow a lesson. Naturally, there were also people who wanted to watch the show. It just so happened that the Dayang Kingdom was going to have a martial arts competition for the Emperor's son-in-law. Coupled with the fact that a group of cultivators had come to participate in this grand event, it would be strange if Dayang City was not lively. Of course, those who came were basically cultivators below the spirit-severing stage. It should be known that Xianxia had made such a big name for himself. If anyone could kill Xianxia, their reputation would naturally rise along with it. When people talked about it, they would definitely say that so-and-so killed Xianxia. Many people usually could not find an opportunity to stand out. Now that they could kill Xianxia, who was at the nascent soul stage, it should not be a problem, right? Therefore, outside the Baiwan Kingdom's embassy, many people dressed in strange clothes appeared every day. These people were naturally cultivators from various countries. However, they all knew that there were Mr. Nongzhu, who was at the middle stage of the spirit-severing stage, and Wen Rue, who was at the early stage of the spirit-severing stage. With two spirit-severing stage cultivators in charge, although they knew that Xianxia was inside, they did not have the guts to barge in. Xianxia, who was inside the embassy, did not know what the situation was like outside, but he could guess that there were many cultivators outside who were eyeing him covetously. If he heard someone say something like that, even if he did not do anything, he would come to watch the show and see how that person died. Sigh. That damned Hua Zongming, I will not forgive you. Xianxia sat on the steps in front of the house and sighed endlessly. Actually, he was no longer interested in participating in that *T martial arts competition to recruit a son-in-law. Back then, because he was unfamiliar with the situation, he wanted to use the opportunity to get to know the cultivators from various countries and understand the situation. Ever since he received Lu Wanwan's Jade Archive and gained some understanding of the situation, he already had a plan in mind. He did not intend to stay in Dayang City to play around anymore. However, he should not have been too greedy and kidnapped Yin Wufeng to extort Yin Baikong. However, who knew that someone would spread the news to the whole world and even attracted Nongzhu over? That damned Nongzhu even lured Hua Zongming and the others over. His identity was accidentally exposed, and in order to get rid of the spirit-severing stage cultivators, he made a bold statement again. I reckon that the development of the situation is like a rolling snowball, getting bigger and bigger. I wonder how many cultivators have come to Dayang City now. Xianxia sat on the steps and muttered to himself. Looking at Nongzhu, who was swaying gently on the swing, he gnashed his teeth in hatred. He wanted nothing more than to go over and carve the word bastard on that handsome face. Xianxia had asked Nongzhu to take Furong away, but that guy just had to be interested in the martial arts competition to recruit a son-in-law. He said that he had never seen it before and insisted on watching it before leaving. Didn't he know that the longer this dragged on, the more cultivators from various countries would come, and the more dangerous it would be for him? He had ulterior motives. After sending Furong back to Utopia, he had yet to think of a way to explain to Chu Pinger that he would not do something like causing a family conflict. It was too dangerous to bring Furong along with him, and the current situation was too dangerous. If he sent her back to Myriad Fragrance Garden after patting his chest in front of his father-in-law, how embarrassing would it be if he sent her back after just a few days? After thinking about it, he could only wait until Nongzhu took Furong away. When that time came, it would not be difficult for him to sneak out alone. He had already prepared a backup plan when he secretly dug a cave outside the city. If it really did not work, he could ask Boss Sang of the vast welcoming tavern to take a silver ball out of the city. Tomorrow was the day of the martial arts competition to recruit a son-in-law. In the majestic palace of Dayang City, flags were fluttering in the wind and security was tight. The venue for the martial arts competition was basically ready, waiting for the winner to take the crown and marry the princess. West Palace Courtyard, Liuxiang House, the widowed residence of the third princess of Dayang Kingdom, Zhao Qinxiang. Inside the Liuxiang house, a young woman in formal dress sat with her eyebrows furrowed. Her appearance was good, and she stared at the portrait hanging on the screen opposite her. Her eyes revealed a sense of stubbornness. On the portrait was a handsome and mighty general in armor, riding on a war horse and holding a spear. Beside the portrait was a note, Chu Xiong. This woman was the third princess of Dayang Kingdom, Zhao Qinxiang. There were no palace maids in her boudoir, only her two married sisters sitting on either side of her. The two sisters had received their father's order and specially came to stay with their sister for a few days. The eldest sister, Zhao Rongxiang, and the second sister, Zhao Hanxiang, looked at each other. The former held Qinxiang's hand and sighed, "Third sister, why do you have to do this? Chu Xiong has been dead for many years. I think he would not want to see you like this in the underworld." "Yes, third sister." Zhao Hanxiang smiled bitterly, "Since you have already begged father to hold the martial arts competition to recruit a son-in-law, this portrait of Chu Xiong should not be left. If the future son-in-law sees it, how can he endure it? I'm afraid it will ruin your sister's lifelong happiness." Zhao Qinxiang did not say anything. Instead, she stood up and walked to the hanging portrait. She looked at it and said, "A good woman does not marry a second husband. Chu Xiong, after I take revenge for you, I will cut my throat and go to the underworld to find you to apologize." After saying this, she rolled up the portrait and stuffed it into the copper incense tripod beside her. Not long after, black smoke rose. The two elder sisters were stunned by her words and actions. Chapter 487. In the imperial study, Emperor Zhaoheng dismissed his two daughters expressionlessly after listening to their report. The two girls looked at each other in surprise. They did not expect their father to have no reaction at all. However, they did not dare to say anything. They had been married for a long time, and when they came back occasionally, they were actually trembling in fear when facing their father. Once they stepped out of the palace, it did not feel like a father and daughter meeting. Instead, it felt like the wife of an official meeting the emperor. The two girls bowed obediently and left. Zhaoheng picked up the memorial on the desk and opened it. Suddenly, he tilted his head slightly and asked, "Has Shirwenguang's vanguard general Zhang Ping really been executed?" Beside him was a white-haired chief eunuch. He replied sternly, "It is difficult for the spies to break through Shirwenguang's hidden sentries. Not many of them can return alive. However, it is true that Zhang Ping violated military discipline and was beheaded. I believe it is true. Shirwenguang's army is very strict. He does not tolerate people who violate military discipline." Zhao Heng's expression was strange. He admired and hated Shirwenguang. He admired him because he was a rare talent, but he hated him because such a general was not under his command but his enemy. Thinking of the 2 million-strong army occupying the western part of Wuxia, the 6 countries could not cross the border. If they made any moves, they would be attacked immediately. The gains did not make up for the losses. They had been at war for many years, even with the 6 countries working together to attack, but they still suffered under Shirwenguang's hands. In a fit of anger, he mobilized millions of troops and divided the 6 countries. The 6 countries could not fight back. In the end, the 6 countries asked for peace with Wuxia. The rulers of the 6 countries were humiliated. One could imagine how depressed they were. The emperor of Wuxia is incompetent, but he has such a general under him. It is difficult for us to cross the line. We are going to lose our lives. Zhaoheng could not help but sigh. "Master, don't worry." The old eunuch said softly, "Didn't the higher-ups tell us to bear with it for now?" After the war between the cultivation world of various countries and the cultivation world of China was over, someone would naturally deal with Shirwenguang secretly. From then on, the western part of Wuxia will no longer have such a brave general. The various countries will work together to divide the Wuxia Empire. From the fact that this old eunuch knew about the cultivation world, it was obvious that he was someone Zhaoheng trusted. It's a pity that he died. Talent was hard to come by. Unfortunately, I can't use it. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. Zhaoheng stared at the old eunuch and said, "Since the third young lady is determined to die, Don't let the third young lady know that Zhang Peng has died. Let her continue to choose her husband. Understood. The old eunuch nodded slightly. Zhao Heng began to focus on the memorials. As he corrected them, he said, "This girl is so stubborn. She has been so devoted to a dead man for so many years. She begged me to hold a martial arts competition to find a prince consort for her. I thought she had thought it through, but I didn't expect her to actually want to find a capable prince consort to avenge the death of Chu Xiong. But that's fine too. I can use this opportunity to recruit talented generals and prepare for the future." "Master is wise," the old eunuch said. Zhao Heng turned his head and glared at him. "Keep an eye on them for me. Most of the royal relatives and nobles from other countries aren't doing well in their own countries. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come to our country to be the emperor's son-in-law. Although they aren't doing well, the influence they have received since childhood is not something the children of ordinary families can compare with. Among them, there are many who are familiar with military strategies. There is only one daughter left and only one prince consort. As long as the rest are talented, try your best to win them over. Let them stay and work for me. I am willing to give them high positions and generous salaries." "Don't worry, master. I will arrange it properly." The old eunuch nodded. Then there was silence in the imperial study. Today was the day of the martial arts competition to find a prince consort. The entire Dayang city was very lively. The common people couldn't enter the palace to watch the competition, so they had to go to the streets to watch the participants pass by. Normally, only the participants could enter the palace. The rest of the attendants were limited. But because of Nongzhu, Wenrui personally went to the palace to look for the Mi brothers. Of course, the Mi brothers wouldn't care about this. They immediately found a few tokens to enter the palace and gave them to Wenrui. As soon as they went out, they saw a crowd. Nongzhu, Yu Qianshou, Furong, and Zhang Peng squeezed into a carriage and joined the long queue of people from various countries. The soldiers had cleared the streets, so the journey was smooth. Nongzhu looked outside with a smile. She hadn't seen such a lively expression for a long time. Furong's face was also full of curiosity. She looked around. The most depressed one was Zhang Peng. After all, among them, he was the only one who was forced by his master to participate in the martial arts competition. The others were just watching the fun, but he was the one being watched. He couldn't be happy even if he wanted to. Yu Qianshou lifted the curtain and looked at the two sides of the street. He kept shaking his head as he looked. There were many cultivators in the crowd. He couldn't tell who had a higher cultivation level, but there were many cultivators who were lower than him. He guessed that they were just here to watch the fun. Since it was like this, he might as well face it calmly. He looked at those cultivators with a provocative look. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, I can't avoid it. Today, I'll show my face to the world of cultivators from various countries. Who's afraid of who? Yu Qianshou looked outside with a smile. From time to time, he raised his middle finger at the cultivators in the crowd. They didn't know what it meant anyway. "Boy, what do you mean by raising your middle finger?" Nongzhu couldn't help but ask. Yu Qianshou replied with an "oh," and said disapprovingly, "It's nothing. It's a custom of Dayang Kingdom. I'm greeting people on the street to show my respect." "I've been here before. Why haven't I heard of it?" Nongzhu murmured and turned around. Without saying a word, she pointed her middle finger out of the window and shook it vigorously. His fingers were slender, and his middle finger was raised elegantly. No wonder he was Mr. Nongzhu. Yu Qianshou's expression twitched and he put down his hand. He couldn't associate himself with that guy. After entering the imperial city, everyone got off their horses and alighted. The gate of the imperial city was guarded by a large number of soldiers. It was impossible for ordinary people to get close. Those miscellaneous cultivators couldn't break in either. They couldn't enter without a token to enter the palace. There were some rules that even cultivators couldn't break. The Mi brothers had transferred a large number of people from the same sect from Mount Guangguang to guard around the imperial city. This was to prevent cultivators from breaking in. The guests from various countries entered the imperial city in a single file. The first thing they did was to pay their respects to the emperor of Dayang Kingdom. Nongzhu, Wenrui, and the others naturally couldn't pay their respects to a secular emperor. Mi Russian was waiting in the imperial city. When he saw them, he immediately came to greet them and took them out for other arrangements. Only Zhang Peng was driven back by Yu Qianshou and went through the process with the Wen family. Mi Russian carefully looked at Yu Qianshou a few times, then led them to a sizable side hall. There were a few hundred chairs arranged in a circle. More than 10 people had already arrived. They were sitting peacefully and chatting with each other. They were probably cultivators sent by various countries to protect the royal family. Mi Russian came in and cupped his hands. Everyone, Mr. Nongzhu and Mr. Wenrui are here. The group of people hurriedly stood up and saluted. Nongzhu raised his middle finger and said, "Do as you please. Don't be polite. I'm here to watch the fun." The group of people returned to their seats with doubts. They didn't know what Nongzhu meant by raising his middle finger, but judging from his expression, it should be a greeting. Everyone's eyes then fell on Yu Qianqiu and sized him up. Yu Qianqiu felt uncomfortable being stared at. He found that there were a few early-stage nascent soul cultivators, a few middle-stage nascent soul cultivators, and a few others whose cultivation he couldn't see. Then people came in one after another. The first thing they did was to greet Nongzhu and Wenrui. Nongzhu casually raised his middle finger, which stunned the people who greeted him. The second thing they did was to look at Yu Qianqiu, who was beside Nongzhu. After being stared at for a long time, Yu Qianqiu was a little numb. He simply entertained himself with Farong and pretended not to see anything. After waiting for a while, it was estimated that almost all the people had arrived. Hundreds of chairs were almost full. Between every 2 chairs, there was a small tea table with tea and snacks on it. There were more than a dozen disciples in the foundation building realm who kept shuttling back and forth, pouring tea and water for them. They were probably brought from the Guangzhou Peak. The atmosphere in the hall was a little quiet. Because of the presence of Nongzhu and Wenrui, the 2 cultivators in the Huashan realm, everyone was a little nervous. However, there were some bold ones who couldn't stand it anymore. They coughed, stood up and saluted Nongzhu and said loudly, "Mr. Nongzhu, may I ask if the person sitting next to you is Yu Qianqiu?" Hundreds of bright eyes all stared at them. Nongzhu looked at Yu Qianqiu with a smile and nodded. "Yes, he is Yu Qianqiu. What can I do for you?" His tone seemed to be reminding something or wanting to see something interesting. Yu Qianqiu immediately looked at that person. He was squarish, tall and strong. From his appearance, he indeed had the talent to stand out. "Silly bird. I am Ding Wei, a cultivator in the late nascent soul stage. I heard that Yu Qianqiu claimed to be the best cultivator in the world below the Huashan realm. Is that true?" Ding Wei asked respectfully. Yes, I heard it with my own ears." Nongzhu pointed at Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, "I can prove that he did say that." Not only did Yu Qianqiu feel uncomfortable hearing this, even when Rui looked at Nongzhu with some surprise. Back at Bai Wan's embassy, he risked everything to protect Yu Qianqiu. How could he be suspected of selling him out now? Nongzhu continued to chat with Ding Wei with a teasing tone. The topic was getting more and more sensitive. Only their hearty voices could be heard in the hall. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes and looked around. Everyone was staring at him. Coupled with Nongzhu's ambiguous attitude, it would be hard for him to have a good time today. He sat next to Wenrui and rubbed his nose with his palm. He tilted his head and asked softly, "Senior Wenrui, apart from the 2 of you, are there any other cultivators in the Huashan realm? What are their cultivations like?" Wenrui was stunned. He looked at Ding Wei and scanned everyone present. Then he replied telepathically, "Apart from me and Mr. Nongzhu, there are no cultivators in the Huashan realm. There are 9 in the early stage of the tribulation passing. The rest are all below the tribulation passing stage. What do you want?" "That's good to hear." Yu Qianqiu muttered softly. Under Wenrui's surprised gaze, he coughed and stood up. Chapter 488. Nongzhu and him were separated by Wenrui. They sat in the middle, followed by Nongzhu, Wenrui, Yu Qianqiu, Farong and Wenbai. Even though he spoke softly, Nongzhu could not hear him. In fact, many people heard him. "Everyone says this kid is good at stirring up trouble. Before I leave, I want to see how he does it." Nongzhu glanced at him with a smile, leaned back and did not speak. Everyone's eyes were focused on him. Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and said, "Ding Wei? Brother Ding? Have we met before?" "No, this is my first time." Ding Wei also cupped his fists. "I see that Brother Ding keeps mentioning my name. Is there something you want to talk to me about?" Yu Qianqiu smiled. Ding Wei snorted, "I'm not the only one looking for you. Based on what you said, cultivators from every country want to find you. Let's see if you have the ability to call yourself the #1 cultivator below the soul-forming stage." He then looked around and shouted, "Everyone, am I right?" "That's right. You're a mere nascent soul cultivator, how dare you call yourself #1? With someone taking the lead and Yu Qianqiu standing up as well, the group of people immediately began to sway from their seats and jeered. Some even stood up and pointed their fingers at him as they berated him. Farong immediately became nervous. She had never seen such a scene before. Xianxia stuck his pinky into his ear and blew on it. Then he slowly looked at the crowd and said indifferently, "Don't get too excited, everyone. I was just joking. I didn't even take it seriously, but you all took it seriously. It's unbelievable." The crowd suddenly became quiet. Nongzhu laughed dryly, but she forced herself not to make a sound. No wonder he was a soul-forming stage cultivator. Ding Wei, who stood up, was stunned for a while. Suddenly, his expression changed and he said angrily, "Joking? How dare you joke about the reputation of the cultivators in the world? What do you think the cultivators in the world are? Brother Ding, don't you think you're putting too much on us? It's not as serious as you say, right?" Xianxia shrugged. Wah! The sound of chairs moving rang out. Almost everyone stood up and pointed at Xianxia as they questioned him sternly. "Little brat, that's nonsense." With so many curses mixed together, it was almost impossible to hear them clearly. Xianxia was shocked. He had never been cursed by so many people at once. From everyone's extreme reactions, it could be seen that the situation was indeed as serious as Ding Wei had said. There was a hint of a common enemy. Did these guys eat rat poison? Is it worth it? It was a pity that he wasn't Stephen Chow, who could scold a whole bunch of people by himself. Otherwise he could really fight it out. Therefore Xianxia frowned coldly at the thousands of fingers pointing at him. He was unfazed by the praise and humiliation. He planned to settle old scores with everyone after they were done scolding him. At first, Nongzhu looked at Xianxia with a smile. This brat was usually sharp-tongued, but now he knew what it meant to have the public's mouth melt gold. She had lived for more than 1,000 years and had never seen a person being scolded by so many people at once. However, after listening for a while, Nongzhu couldn't laugh anymore. It was a mess and she didn't know how long it would last. It was simply annoying. He immediately let out a cold snort that reverberated in the hall. The curses of the group of people finally stopped. Xianxia really had to give it to these people. They were like shrews cursing in the streets. In fact, he should have a deeper understanding of what it meant to anger the public. If Nongzhu and Wenrui were not sitting here, he reckoned that a group of people would have rushed up and beaten him up. "Everyone." Xianxia raised his hand and looked around. "I am deeply aware of my mistake. Because of my momentary slip of the tongue, I have hurt the feelings of the majority of the cultivators in the cultivation world. Here I solemnly express my sincerest apology to everyone. I hope that you can spread my words and resolve this misunderstanding as soon as possible. I hope that we can bury the hatchet and build a better tomorrow for the cultivation world hand in hand. Thank you, everyone." His words were sincere and so was his attitude. Unfortunately, he didn't get the applause that Xianxia had expected. This speech was fresh and everyone needed some time to digest it. There was a short silence in the hall again. The innocent Farong was the first to come to her senses. She looked at Xianxia with admiration. It turned out that words could be said in such a dignified way. Nongzhu frowned and exchanged a look with Wenrui. She muttered, "What nonsense are they talking about?" Someone came to his senses and cursed, "Damn it! You are from the cultivation world of wuxia. You are not on the same side as us. Who wants to build a better tomorrow for the cultivation world hand in hand with you?" There was a lot of cursing, but the voices were much softer. Thanks to Nongzhu's cold snort, they had calmed down a lot. Ding Wei shouted, "Xianxia, you have to pay the price for saying something wrong. How can you just apologize? If you do that, do we still need to fight and kill in the cultivation world?" "Damn it. This seems to be the line I used before." Xianxia's face darkened. He said indifferently, "I have let you scold me and I have apologized. What else do you want?" Everyone was stunned. They really didn't know what to do with him. Everyone looked at Nongzhu. They all knew that Nongzhu was Xianxia's protection. If they angered him, no one present would have a good ending. Nongzhu smiled and drew circles on the tea table with her slender fingers. She smiled at Wenrui and said, "We will not interfere with the younger generation's business." He didn't even look at Xianxia, whose face was as cold as ice. Wenrui glanced at him and was startled. He nodded slightly, indicating that he would not interfere with the younger generation's business. The two soul-forming cultivators said that they would not interfere. Everyone was emboldened. Ding Wei shouted, "If you are really the strongest cultivator below the soul-forming stage, then show me what you are capable of. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave." "You want to fight?" Xianxia sneered. Ding Wei didn't want to waste time. He stretched out his hand and said, "I will fight you first. You are the strongest cultivator below the soul-forming stage." The meaning behind his words was clear. He wanted to fight. You think you're worthy? Yu Qianzhou raised his eyebrows and said, I think you're tired of living, right? The crowd was in an uproar. This guy obviously didn't take Ding Wei seriously. Ding Wei was so angry that he laughed and said, whether I am worthy or not is not a matter of words. Only after we fight will we know who is tired of living. Please. The hall was surrounded by the crowd. The space left in the middle was only a few square meters. If they were to fight, they really didn't know if it would be enough for two people to fight. I don't want to fight. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and said, if you want to fight, then I'll fight. Who do you think I am? He sat back in his seat as if it was none of his business. Nongzhu was stunned. This didn't seem like the Yu Qianzhou she heard about. What do you mean by the strongest cultivator below the soul-forming stage? I think he's just a cowardly rat hiding his head and tail. Ding Wei cursed to his heart's content. The crowd immediately started to condemn him again. Their words were almost the same as Ding Wei's. Yu Qianzhou laughed coldly and slowly stood up. He reached out and pointed at Ding Wei and said, you like to scold me? Once I make a move, I'm afraid you won't even have the chance to cry when you fall. He then pointed at the crowd and said disdainfully, you are just a bunch of trash. Do you think you are worthy to bare your fangs and brandish your claws at me? Nongzhu looked at him suspiciously. This guy's words were so soft and hard today. What was he trying to do? The extremely slanderous words made the crowd feel like they had eaten gunpowder. After sitting down for a while, they all jumped up again. Someone even shouted, Yu Qianzhou, come and fight me if you have the guts. A 3-foot-long blue flying knife flew out of Ding Wei's storage bag. He raised it high and was ready to fight first. Yu Qianzhou pushed his hand and said, wait. I knew you were a coward who only put up a strong front. Ding Wei sneered. You want to fight? No problem. But I don't do things that I don't have anything better to do. Yu Qianzhou glanced at the crowd in disdain. He took out a storage bag and threw it on the tea table between him and Wenrui. He pointed at it and said, there are 1 million upper-grade spirit stones in there. If anyone beats me or kills me, this 1 million upper-grade spirit stones will belong to him. Nongzhu was stunned. Was there something wrong with this kid's brain? He said he didn't do things that he didn't have anything better to do. The crowd was also stunned. Was there such a good thing? Then everyone nodded in understanding. This kid was probably feeling guilty and wanted to use the situation to make people think that he was confident and was just trying to scare them. Haha. Ding Wei laughed wildly. Everyone, I'm sorry. Who told me to come out first? This 1 million high-grade spirit stones is mine. What are you laughing at? Yu Qianzhou immediately poured cold water on them. This is a gamble of money and life. Anyone who wants to fight me and earn 1 million spirit stones must first take out 1 million high-grade spirit stones as a wager. If you don't have money, don't embarrass yourself. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Let the rich fight. I'll fight you anytime. Ding Wei's arrogant smile froze on his face. The crowd was also stunned. The people here were not poor, but they did not have high positions in their sections. There were not many who could carry 1 million high-grade spirit stones with them. Nongzhu was suddenly enlightened. It turned out that this guy admitted defeat first to make everyone think that he was afraid of them. When a group of people unscrupulously criticized him, he ridiculed them so that they had no choice but to avenge their humiliation. Then he threw out a huge bet. This group of people was in a difficult position. Nongzhu squinted at everyone's expressions. Most people thought that Yu Qianzhou was bullying them because they did not have money. He wanted to scare them with a huge wager to avoid a fight. What they didn't know was that this kid wanted to kill people to earn money. He wanted to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. It seemed that Zi was right. Whatever this kid did, it was mostly related to money. Ding Wei, if you don't have money, get someone else to come up. Don't just stand there. Yu Qianzhou sneered. Ding Wei said angrily, I came in a hurry. Where do I have so many spirit stones to bet with you? You are clearly scared and purposely used money to make things difficult for others. TSK. If you really want to fight me, that is not a problem at all. Yu Qianzhou glanced at me Russian who was standing at the side with his hands behind his back. This old thing was standing there calmly and did not say anything. How could he let He Zongming's people watch? He raised his finger and said, it is normal that the guests did not bring money at the last minute. But I think the owner of this place wants to gather some spirit stones in his territory. If you really want to prove that you are not trash, you can borrow some from the owner. I think the owner is not so stingy. Chapter 489. Everyone looked at me Russian, not knowing what he would say. Me Russian was shocked. He had been standing on the side and had not said a word. How did he get involved? Borrow money to fight? Ding Wei was dumbfounded. Everyone fell into silence again. Nongzhu was overjoyed. This brat was really vengeful. He had his eyes on Hua Zongming and would not let him go if he had the chance. How did Bai Changchun get such a precious disciple? I told you, you are a bunch of trash. Yu Qianzhou looked around and said, gambling without borrowing money is fake. You have no confidence in yourself. If you really have the confidence to defeat me, are you afraid of not being able to pay me back? What a joke. No wonder people say that dogs that bark don't bite and dogs that bite don't bark. It is indeed true. Today I present these words to all of you, and I hope that all of you will kindly accept them. How dare you? How arrogant! The group was angered by these words. He actually called them dogs. Ding Wei's face turned red as he said, Yu Qianzhou, why are you the one making the rules? Today has nothing to do with money. I'm going to fight you to the death. He wasn't going to take out any money to fight Yu Qianzhou head-on. Wait. Yu Qianzhou pushed his hand away and said to me Russian in a deep voice, this is the territory of your light illumination peak. No matter what, I'm a guest. Now that someone wants to attack me, is your light illumination peak really going to ignore it? We're all guests, so how can you favor one over the other? Is this how your light illumination peak treats its guests? With this accusation on him, me Russian knew he had to speak up. After all, he was the owner of this place. There were some rules that no one could break. He teleported between the two of them and said lightly, we are all guests. We can talk things over. Since me Russian had already come out to stop them, Ding Wei naturally did not dare to be presumptuous in front of this cultivator in the last phase of Heaven's test. He put away the blue flying knife in his hand, pointed at Ding Wei and shouted, Yu Qianzhou, you are so shameless. You said you would fight, but now you are cowering. Are you still a man? Yu Qianzhou was too lazy to pay attention to him. He cupped his hands to me Russian and said, High Priest, you have seen what happened, now I need you to come and uphold justice. Nongzhu smiled and said nothing. He wanted to see how this guy would end up talking nonsense. How do you want me to uphold justice? Me Russian said expressionlessly. Although they have the advantage in numbers, I'm not someone who's afraid of trouble. But if they take turns and I fight one after the other, won't I have to fight more than 300 rounds? Even if I win every round, I'll be exhausted to death. Yu Qianzhou chuckled and said, I admit that I increased the bet to reduce the pressure and eliminate those who can't afford it. Do you think it's too much for me to make a small request against more than 300 people, High Priest? Me Russian was not in a hurry to answer. He asked the crowd, do you think Yu Qianzhou's request is too much? No matter how thick-skinned they were, when they heard this, it was 1 to 300. Who would have the nerve to say the word, too much? In the silence, me Russian nodded to Yu Qianzhou and said, no one objected, your request is too much. Is this the justice you want me to uphold? The justice I want you to uphold is very simple. Yu Qianzhou pointed to the storage bag on the tea table and said, gambling with your life and money. If you can afford 1 million upper-level spiritual stones, I will play with you anytime. If someone can't afford it and still wants to pick a fight, then please uphold justice, High Priest. He glanced at Ding Wei as if saying that Ding Wei was the one who couldn't afford it and still wanted to pick a fight. Ding Wei's face turned red in anger. He gritted his teeth but couldn't do anything. Me Russian was still expressionless. He asked the crowd, do you all agree that I will uphold justice? After waiting for a while, no one spoke. He nodded and said, since no one objects, then I will accept it. You all do as you wish. Then he teleported back to his original position. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand at Ding Wei with disdain and said, if you don't have the money, then leave. Don't stop other people from getting rich. When he said, other people, it wasn't clear if he was talking about others or himself. If Ding Wei left obediently like this, he wouldn't be able to come out in the future. He would be laughed at to death. He had indeed reached the point where he couldn't back down. Making up his mind, he gritted his teeth and strode towards me Russian and said, High Priest, can you temporarily lend me 1 million upper-level spiritual stones? If I win, I will return it immediately. If I lose, my sect will not renege on this debt. When he said this, his face was full of shame and anger. Only by killing Yu Qianzhou would he be able to wash away his shame. Yu Qianzhou scratched his nose and said in a strange tone, when borrowing money, first ask clearly if there is interest in case there is trouble afterwards. Don't look at me, I am reminding you out of goodwill. Ding Wei fiercely turned his head away. It was as if he had swallowed a fly. Logically, who would mention interest when borrowing spirit stones like this? Me Russian didn't rely on lending spirit stones to earn interest to survive. But since someone reminded him, How could he be thick-skinned and pretend he didn't know? He gritted his teeth and said, "High priest, about the interest?" Russian waved his hand to stop him from continuing. If he really asked for Ding Wei's interest in front of so many people, then he would really offend his sect. He said indifferently, "There is no interest." He already took out a storage ring and threw it over. "Thank you, High Priest." Ding Wei took the storage ring and thanked him. He turned around and strode over, holding the storage ring, and yelled, "Yu Qianqiu, let's see what else you have to say now." "Of course I have something to say." Yu Qianqiu shrugged and said, "The bet should be given to a person of virtue and prestige that we both trust. It can't be given to you or me." Ding Wei snorted and didn't say anything. Obviously he agreed with this. The two of them looked at the two soul-forming cultivators at the same time. When it came to virtue and prestige, no one here could compare to the two of them. When Nongzhu heard this, he rubbed his hands and laughed. "If that's the case, then I will reluctantly do it." They were masters in the middle stage of soul forming. Of course they wouldn't stain their spirit stones. Ding Wei didn't say anything and was about to hand over the storage ring to Nongzhu. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu shouted, "Wait, I am a little worried about handing the spirit stones to Mr. Nongzhu. It's better to give it to Senior Wenrui." Everyone was stunned. Nongzhu was his umbrella. He didn't trust Nongzhu, but Wenrui? Ding Wei was about to go crazy from being tormented by this person. He didn't know if he should hand over the storage bag in his hand or not. Nongzhu also reached out his hand, but he didn't know whether to take it or not. He stared at Yu Qianqiu angrily. How dare he embarrass him in front of so many people? There was no need to explain. Yu Qianqiu just didn't trust Nongzhu. Now that the money was in Nongzhu's hands, others might be able to get it back, but it would be difficult for him. Especially his proactive response, it made people even more suspicious. Yu Qianqiu pushed the storage ring to Wenrui and said, "Senior Wenrui, please take care of it for now. If I lose or something happens to me, give this storage ring to the person who defeats me." Wenrui glanced at Nongzhu, who was leaning on the chair with her eyes closed. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He put the storage ring on the tea table. With his cultivation, if Nongzhu didn't insist on coming, who would come to join in the fun? People in the soul-forming stage were usually heard but not seen. It was even more impossible for them to work for others. Ding Wei awkwardly took back the storage ring and didn't dare to look at Nongzhu again. He pushed the storage ring to Wenrui and said the same thing as Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu dared to say that he didn't trust Nongzhu. Ding Wei didn't dare to say that he didn't trust Wenrui, so he gave the storage ring to Wenrui for safekeeping. "Please." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand gently. It was about to begin. Everyone was instantly refreshed. Even Nongzhu opened her eyes, forgetting about the temporary unhappiness. "Yu Qianqiu." Furong suddenly stood up, the worry in her eyes was obvious. Yu Qianqiu frowned slightly and glared at her. Furong sat back down in embarrassment. Ding Wei stepped back and was instantly refreshed. Finally he could avenge his humiliation. He looked at the young couple and laughed. "Yu Qianqiu, if you have any last words, tell your woman. I'll give you the time." The surrounding people also laughed along with him. Yu Qianqiu had just put on a smiling face for Furong. When he heard this, he slowly turned around. There was no expression on his face. He asked calmly, "How do you want to die?" Ding Wei snorted and nodded. "You're about to die and you still dare to talk big." The blue flying knife once again flew above his head. Yu Qianqiu spread out his sleeves and a dozen green lights flashed out, circling around his body. Everyone present stared at the green flying swords with twinkling eyes. They had heard that Yu Qianqiu could control multiple flying swords at the same time, but this was the first time they had seen it. Out of everyone present, only Nongzhu knew that these flying swords were formed from green flames. The flying swords danced around him as Yu Qianqiu walked towards Ding Wei expressionlessly. He said indifferently, "If I say you're trash, then you're trash. I'll let you make the first move." "I want to see who's the trash." Ding Wei roared angrily, and the blue saber above his head began to spin faster and faster. One saber became two became four, until it became 8 and then it stopped increasing. Yu Qianqiu was slightly surprised. He didn't know if it was an illusion or if the blue knife was also a treasure. Swoosh swoosh. The 8 rapidly spinning blue knives were like 8 blue plates. With a swoosh sound they suddenly spread out. Yu Qianqiu looked to his left and right. The blue revolving flying daggers had already surrounded him from all directions and were rapidly approaching him. *CK. This thing might be useful to scare others, but you want to play this game with me? Let's see who's surrounded. Yu Qianqiu activated his sword art. The protective flying sword immediately split into 8 green lights. They quickly clashed with the 8 flying knives, making a series of metal clanging sounds. Then he waved his sleeves. Hundreds of green lights instantly flew out from his sleeves and scattered around the hall, dazzling everyone's eyes. By the time the flying sword stopped spinning, everyone realized that Ding Wei was already surrounded by hundreds of flying swords. Chapter 490. It's over. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Ding Wei himself was scared out of his wits. He had never experienced the feeling of being surrounded by so many flying swords. The fight had just begun and it had already become like this. What was the point of fighting? 8 spinning blue flying daggers quickly flew back from the gaps between the densely packed flying swords. They danced around his body trying to protect him. However, the 8 flying knives could only protect a limited area. No matter how fast they were, it would be difficult to block the simultaneous attack of hundreds of flying swords. There had to be a loophole. Thus, without saying anything, he released his shield of vigor. Xianxia stared at him with a look of disdain. The flying swords were ready to attack, but they did not attack. It was as if they were waiting for him to prepare his defense. It was clear that he had a card up his sleeve. Everyone sighed inwardly. Ding Wei was probably doomed. Furong patted her chest lightly. She could also see that her man was going to win. Nongzhu did not say anything. He had expected this to happen. If he could not even deal with a nascent soul cultivator, then Xianxia did not deserve to be the disciple of the world's most powerful cultivator. I really don't understand. There are people in the tribulation stage here. They don't come out, so why did you, a nascent soul cultivator, come out? Aren't you taking your life as a joke? Can you tell me why? Xianxia asked with a puzzled expression. Ding Wei shouted angrily, Xianxia, don't put on airs here. It's not certain who will win. The 8 blue flying knives spun faster and faster, moving quickly outside the shield of vigor. Killing you is as easy as taking something out of my pocket. How can these broken knives stop me? Xianxia narrowed his eyes and said, but I'll give you a chance to live. Do you want it? Now the atmosphere was finally not as lively as before. Only the swishing sound of the blue knives could be heard. Everyone listened attentively, waiting for Ding Wei's answer. Ding Wei did not answer immediately. Obviously, he was a little moved by Xianxia's words, but he could not show weakness. He immediately shouted, if you have something to say, say it. Don't be so wishy-washy. There's always a price to pay for doing something wrong. Pointing 2 fingers at the ground, Xianxia sneered, admit that you're trash, kneel and beg for mercy, and I'll spare your life. Wah! The audience was in an uproar. This guy was too arrogant. However, Ding Wei, who was surrounded by flying swords, did not make a sound. As there were too many flying swords, no one could see his expression clearly. Everyone looked at each other. Would Ding Wei really agree to this? They didn't know that Ding Wei was trembling in anger and couldn't even speak. The other party was clearly humiliating him in public. This was also Xianxia's revenge on the bird who provoked him first. Why aren't you talking? Xianxia chuckled and said, it doesn't matter if you die, but it's a pity that you'll leave a huge debt for the sect after you die. Fortunately, the head priest doesn't want you to pay interest. Xianxia, go to hell. Ding Wei finally let out an angry roar. 8 blue swords whistled as they swept over in an arc. Xianxia flicked his finger and dozens of flying swords flew out, immediately entangling the blue swords. With a cold expression, he said, I have to admit, if you met other nascent soul stage cultivators, your 8 blue swords would indeed pose a great threat to them, making it hard for them to take care of everything. Unfortunately, you met me and I only have 8 blue swords. With that said, he waved his sleeves and a black shadow flashed out, shooting into the encirclement of swords. Everyone had yet to figure out what was going on. A mournful scream suddenly rang out. The 8 blue swords suddenly fell to the ground powerlessly. Before they landed, they reformed into one and fell to the ground with a ding-dang. Everyone was shocked, but they saw Xianxia wave his hand lightly, retrieving the black shadow that shot out. The swords instantly surged violently. A cloud of red mist began to spread, and the thick smell of blood began to fill the entire hall. After hundreds of blue flying swords continuously flashed back into Xianxia's sleeves, Ding Wei had already disappeared. Everyone immediately understood that Ding Wei had already been turned into dust by the flying swords. This thick smell of blood was... Everyone waved their hands and stirred, forcing the disgusting blood mist out of the hall. Xianxia picked up the blue swords on the ground and looked at them, then casually threw them into his storage bag. When everyone looked at him again, their hearts were a little cold. What a powerful sword art. Xianxia walked in front of Wenrui and smiled. I won, this spirit stone is mine. Wenrui didn't say a word, nor did he express any attitude. Whoever won could come and take it themselves. As a dignified soul formation expert, how could he really help these people do this? His role was to make sure that no one dared to snatch things from him. He picked up the 2 storage bags and showed them to everyone. Is there anyone who is unconvinced? Bring out the money. Gambling with money in life, I will continue to play with you. He returned to his seat, hugged the storage bags and counted the spirit stones as he continued. If you don't have money, you can borrow from the head elder. In his territory, don't mention 2 million, even 1 or 200 million is no problem. Hurry up, don't miss out. Russian stared at him indifferently. The group of people no longer said he was talking nonsense. They looked at each other and finally looked at the few tribulation-passing early-stage cultivators. Unfortunately, no one jumped out like Ding Wei. Xianxia put away one of the storage bags and glanced at everyone. He thought, anyway, don't think about being free. Rather than waiting for you to find me, I might as well find you. From today onwards, I will go all out. If I don't turn this place upside down, I won't be called Xianxia. I said you are trash, but you are still unconvinced. Shouting is useless. If you have the guts, show me your actions. Xianxia put the storage bag he earned back on the coffee table next to Wenrui and pointed at it. If you have the guts, bring out the money to gamble. If you don't have the guts, take a detour when you see me. Don't bark like a dog. What the hell is this? Wow. Everyone was finally enraged and stood up one by one. Nongzhu looked at him in shock and thought, this guy is crazy. Does he want to go against the entire cultivation world by saying this? However, this was not the craziest thing. Xianxia also stood up and pointed at the crowd. His face was filled with disdain as he said, don't be unconvinced. I can't be bothered to fight you all one by one. As long as you have the money, it doesn't matter if you all come at me together. I will take you all on alone. Wenrui and Nongzhu looked at each other as if they were asking Nongzhu who this guy was. He was too arrogant. Everyone here represented a faction. Wouldn't that be offending all the countries? Would he still want to live in the future? Nongzhu shook her head with a wry smile. Furong's mouth turned into a circle. Although she did not know where these people came from, she was still shocked by Xianxia's words. As soon as he finished speaking, 3 people flashed out from the crowd almost at the same time. The 3 of them looked at each other in shock. Obviously, they did not expect such a coincidence. It seemed like they were really going to fight 3 against 1. For a moment, they were stunned and felt a little embarrassed. It's okay, it's okay. I have always been a man of my word. My words are like water that has been spilled. Let's fight together. Xianxia's bellicose nature was completely stimulated. For a moment, he was full of fighting spirit and was ready to test the hard work he had put in all these years. To be honest, ever since he defeated 2 cultivators at the end of the passing calamity stage, he had long looked down on ordinary cultivators. Fighting someone like Ding Wei was not satisfying at all. However, he did not get too excited. He pointed at the storage bag on the coffee table and said, put down 1 million upper-level spirit stones. Those who don't have spirit stones can go back. Since he had said so, who would be polite with him? After seeing Xianxia fight, the 3 of them were not confident that they could defeat him. However, as cultivators at the passing calamity stage, if they did not stand up for him, they would not be able to raise their heads when they went back. They had no choice but to come out. Now, it was exactly what the 3 of them wanted. A person in a blue robe walked over. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly. This outfit was very familiar. Sure enough, the person said in a deep voice, Xiaoshui country's early passing calamity stage cultivator, Yin Feng seeks advice. Then he bowed to the 2 soul formation stage cultivators, took out a storage bag and placed it beside Wenrui. Tuan country's early passing calamity stage cultivator, Wu Yankai seeks advice. A black-robed person also put down a storage bag. West Asian country's early passing calamity stage cultivator, Yuan Tonghai seeks advice. A gray-robed person also put down a storage bag like the previous 2. The 3 passing calamity stage cultivators attacked together. This time it was enough to make that kid suffer. The crowd cheered loudly. They all stood up and clamored, hoping that the 3 of them would make Xianxia die a horrible death. It seems that there are still a few rich people. Xianxia stood up in high spirits, thinking that he could fight to his heart's content. Suddenly, a figure flashed in the middle of the group. Russian said expressionlessly, don't fight first. This is the Dayang country's palace. It can't withstand your torment. Let's go somewhere else. Follow me. After saying that, he took the lead and flashed out of the hall, flying into the sky. The few of them looked at each other, grabbed their own storage bags and followed. Before Xianxia left, he said to Furong and followed Senior Nongzhu. The group of people dispersed, flashed out of the hall and flew away like a swarm. In the blink of an eye, only Nongzhu, Wenrui, Wenbai and Furong were left in the hall. There were also a dozen disciples from Guangguang Peak who were at a loss. Wenrui asked Nongzhu, "What should we do?" Nongzhu rubbed her hands and said with a smile, "This kid doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He must have taken a strong medicine today. Let's go and take a look." After saying that, she grabbed Furong's hand and flew away. Wenrui shook his head with a bitter smile and waved at Wenbai. The two of them also followed. The hall suddenly became empty. The tables and chairs were in a mess. The remaining Foundation establishment disciples looked at each other. The ordinary people in the palace didn't notice, but some cultivators noticed the group of people flying away. They didn't know what happened. On the various stages, the competition had already begun. Zhang Peng, who had just won a match with a few punches and kicks, also noticed the group of cultivators flying away. He wanted to follow them, but his master didn't allow him to. He could only hold back his anger and continue to compete with the ordinary people. Chapter 491. A group of cultivators suddenly flew out of the palace and headed west, immediately alerting all the cultivators in Deyang City who had gathered here. One by one they found a remote corner and quickly chased after them, out of the sight of mortals. After everyone arrived, they realized that Mi Russian really knew how to find a place. This place was the flat land formed by Yin Baikong's raging attack on 6 mountain peaks. This place was remote and deep in the mountains, making it difficult for mortals to enter. Moreover, the place was wide and flat enough, at least a few thousand square meters. Although Yu Qianzhou had heard of Yin Baikong's mountain-building movement from Wenrui and Nongzhu, he was still shocked when he saw it with his own eyes. Oh my! This expert in the late stage of soul formation was really something. Not to mention creating the world. He still had the ability to collapse the mountains and split the earth. Originally, there were only about 300 cultivators from the palace. Now that cultivators from Deyang City came to make up the number had increased by almost 10 times, almost 3,000 people. Their cultivation levels were high and low. There were many in the Foundation establishment stage, and it seemed that there were also many in the late stage of tribulation passing. This remote mountain suddenly became bustling with noise and excitement. The cultivators from Deyang City didn't know about it, so they found their acquaintances from the palace. After asking about the cause of the matter, they were all furious. In an instant, there was a wave of angry voices scolding Yu Qianzhou in the remote mountain. "Scold slowly. I won't lose a piece of flesh." Yu Qianzhou still looked as if he was facing thousands of fingers. When faced with such a situation, the best choice was to not speak. Previously, he couldn't even win against 300 people. Now, there was no need to even mention it when it was 1 against 3,000. Therefore, he let them scold. That was the best choice. Nongzhu looked around happily, clicking her tongue non-stop. What a spectacular scene. He was being scolded by 3,000 people at the same time. When he returned, he must tell Bai Changchun about this unique scene and let him know that the disciple of the world's #1 expert was indeed extraordinary. Presumably, old Bai would turn pale with fright. Hibiscus looked at her surroundings. It was as if she was a small boat in the middle of a raging storm. The huge waves around her could come crashing over at any time and swallow Yu Qianzhou in one gulp. He then looked at the sneering Yu Qianzhou. His expression was filled with disdain. There was not a hint of panic or fear on his face. She suddenly had an epiphany. This man's life must have been filled with danger and excitement. He must have been used to ups and downs. Compared to her peaceful life on Fuxian Island, it was completely different. With the 2 soul formation stage experts holding the fort, although the scolding got louder and louder, it didn't cause any trouble. Several hundred square meters of space gradually emptied out. There were only 4 people left in the center. Yu Qianzhou, Yen Feng, Wu Yankai and Yuan Tonghai. A trace of fierceness flashed across Yu Qianzhou's face. He swung his hand and threw the storage pouch at the feet of Wenrui and Nongzhu. The person standing in the middle was none other than Furong. Immediately after, the other 3 people also threw their storage pouches over. People kept shouting, "Beat him to death! Kill him!" Yu Qianzhou looked around and took out 2 items from the storage pouch with both hands. 2 black machetes that were almost 2 meters long appeared again. They were held in his left and right hands and were very eye-catching. Once the 2 machetes were taken out, the scolding stopped and everyone started whispering to each other. The topic of discussion was the saber-drawing assembly that they had heard of. These two machetes should be the two legendary treasured machetes. They didn't expect this guy to be carrying them with him all this time. In an instant, all kinds of greedy expressions appeared in many people's eyes. Just like when Yu Qianzhou killed Ding Wei. When Ding Wei died, his blue flying knife was picked up by Yu Qianzhou. No one said anything. If anyone could kill Yu Qianzhou, then his two treasured machetes. Yan Feng's eyes narrowed. He heard that Yan Feng, who went to China, died under these machetes. The other two people looked at the machetes with burning eyes. It was a pity that there were only two machetes. It was destined that one of them wouldn't be able to get it. Yan Feng slowly took out an iron-colored whip that was rolled up together. Yu Qianzhou glanced at it. It seemed like the Xiaoshui country's rumor sect was most proficient in using whips. Back then, the senior and junior brothers with the surname Yan who died in the 100 Flowers Valley used whips. It seemed like this person's whip wasn't as long as the other three's, but it looked much longer. Wu Yankai used a flying sword. Yuan Tonghai used a bow and arrows. It was a blood-red longbow and even the bowstring was red. It was unknown what it was made of. A quiver was slung on his back, and the arrows inside were also blood-red. Yu Qianzhou was a little surprised. There were people who used bows and arrows as artifacts. What if the arrows in the quiver ran out? Now, he really felt the difference between the cultivation world of various countries and the cultivation world of China. The latter almost all used flying swords, while the former used all kinds of strange weapons. The four people he met today all had different weapons. Luckily I can wield a machete too. Mi Russian saw that they were in position and said expressionlessly, "We'll start here. Everyone, let's begin." The moment he said that, Yan Feng and the other two dodged and surrounded Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou waved his two machetes and shouted, "Watch out for my machete." He quickly chased after Yan Feng. He had fought with people from rumor sect in the 100 Flowers Valley and was experienced in dealing with people who used whips. As for the others, they didn't know what was going on. Yan Feng waved his hand and a whip that was tens of meters long coiled around the charging Yu Qianzhou. It seemed like he wanted to trap Yu Qianzhou. Chop! Yu Qianzhou shouted and slashed with his machete. Suddenly, a whistling sound came from behind him. It sounded very imposing and powerful. He didn't even need to look to know that one of the other two had made a move. He didn't have time to deal with the whip. Without a second word, he quickly dodged to the side. Using the opportunity to flip in midair, he saw that it was Wu Yankai's flying sword. Cultivators cultivated flying swords because they were easier to control than most weapons. Furthermore, they were very nimble. Indeed, the moment Yu Qianzhou dodged, the flying sword turned and shot over without stopping. At the same time, Yan Feng's whip also whistled over. Yu Qianzhou was still in midair when he saw Yuan Tonghai pulling out 3 arrows from the quiver on his back. He knocked them all and shot them out. The 3 arrows shot out at the same time, leaving a trail of blood in the air as they crossed each other. Damn! The arrow was even curved. Yu Qianzhou shouted again, "Watch out for my treasured saber." Before he landed on the ground, he used the saber in his right hand to meet the incoming whip. At the same time, he used the saber in his left hand to cut it. Dang! Po! 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 The long whip that was circling over broke into 5 or 6 pieces. Yan Feng was startled and did not dare to send out the remaining whip. At the same time, Wu Yankai felt a heartache. His flying sword was also broken into 2 by the saber. It fell to the ground and became 2 pieces of scrap metal. It couldn't fly anymore. There was an uproar outside the arena. These 2 treasured sabers were too sharp. They cut the sword and the whip like they were cutting tofu. Weapons that could be used by cultivators in the tribulation realm weren't the Dharma artifacts of ordinary cultivators. Moreover, the weapons in the hands of these 3 people were indeed Dharma treasures. Instantly, everyone stared at the 2 treasured sabers with even more fervor. This was because they had verified that they were indeed rare treasures. Yu Qianzhou wasn't in the mood to care about what the people outside the arena thought. He still had to deal with the 3 incoming arrows. The saber was big enough. Once he landed on the ground, he put the 2 sabers together and used them as a shield. Dang dang dang. Although the flying sword blocked the arrows, Yu Qianzhou slid more than 10 meters away from the impact. A straight line immediately appeared on the soft ground. Nongzhu shook her head slightly. This was the difference in cultivation. It was a flaw that couldn't be made up for. Yu Qianzhou's arms were numb from the impact. He almost let go of the 2 sabers. However, the 3 arrows that were also sent flying spun in the air and fell straight back into the quiver on Yuan Tonghai's back. Damn it! What kind of lousy arrows are they? They can go home by themselves. Yu Qianqiu shook his arm and rushed towards Yan Feng again. Who asked Yanji to threaten me? If I don't kill you first, who else can I kill? This time he learned his lesson. A flying sword flew out from his sleeve. When he jumped up, the flying sword immediately carried him and rushed towards Yanji. Why do you keep staring at me? Wu Yankai doesn't have anything in his hands and you don't want to go. Yan Feng was speechless. He casually swung his broken whip and stabbed it straight towards Yu Qianqiu like a javelin. Wu Yankai and Yuan Tonghai naturally wouldn't leave Yan Feng alone. They couldn't let Yu Qianqiu deal with one and then turn around to deal with them. Wu Yankai took out another flying sword from his storage bag. Although it wasn't as good as the previous one, it was still useful. Yuan Tonghai grabbed an arrow and knocked it. Nobody knew how he used it, but 7 or 8 blood shadow lines shot out. Go to hell. Yu Qianqiu roared and threw the 2 treasured sabers into his storage bag. He realized that although the treasured sabers were easy to use, they weren't very practical. He had to rush up and slash. It was fine to use them against people with similar cultivation, but it was more suitable for sneak attacks against people with higher cultivation. Otherwise he wouldn't be able to get close to them. He kept the sabers and flew up into the sky on his sword, avoiding the 3's attacks. Wu Yankai and the other 2 nodded at each other and quickly shot up into the sky, chasing after them. The surrounding spectators immediately cheered. Furong clasped her hands together nervously. Nongzhu glanced at her and said, "Don't worry. This brat has many trump cards. He hasn't used any of them yet. He won't die." When Rui tilted his head and looked, he didn't expect Nongzhu to be so confident in Yu Qianqiu. Just in time. Yu Qianqiu stopped in the air and sneered. "I was afraid that the 3 of you would scatter too far and I wouldn't be able to catch up. It's best if you come together." He turned around and dove down. His sleeves swelled up and an endless stream of green shadows flashed out. In an instant, thousands of flying swords appeared, covering the sky and covering the earth as they flew towards the 3 people below. The momentum of the thunderous sword rain made the surrounding people dumbfounded. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, who would believe that someone could actually control thousands of swords at the same time? So many flying swords. The 3 people who were chasing after them were dumbfounded at first. Then they were scared out of their wits. They realized that they had fallen into a trap. They hurriedly stopped and split up without saying a word, fleeing in panic. However, with their cultivation, their flying speed wasn't fast enough to outrun the flying swords. Moreover, they were lured by Yu Qianqiu and then attacked so suddenly. How could they escape so easily? Chapter 492. The sudden turn of events stunned the people who had been cheering loudly just now. Yu Qianqiu put his palms together in front of his chest and controlled the thousands of flying swords to chase in 3 different directions. Qing Yaoyao's sword shadows rushed forward and quickly caught up to the 3. In the face of danger, the 3 released their protective aura at the same time and temporarily blocked the flying swords' attack. The flying swords in the air formed 3 green thorny balls. Yu Qianqiu glanced at them and opened his palms. 3 black shadows shot out and directly entered the flying swords that formed the balls. Ah! 3 screams sounded in the air. The people below thought it's over. Yu Qianqiu waved his arms and the thousands of flying swords rushed back into his sleeves. 3 flying swords carried 3 storage bags and sent them to him. 4 cultivators who could casually take out 1,000,000, the items in their storage bags would probably not be too bad, so he naturally had to accept them. The 3 corpses fell from the sky. This place was newly excavated, so the soil was very soft. The 3 corpses smashed out half a deep pit and were embedded in the ground. This time he didn't destroy the corpses. He wanted to intimidate everyone and tell everyone that 3 early-stage tribulation-passing cultivators had been killed by him. In the future, those nascent soul cultivators shouldn't bark in front of me. Furong covered her mouth in shock. The man who grew spirit herbs with her in Wanfen Garden had actually become so powerful. In the blink of an eye, he killed 3 early-stage tribulation-passing cultivators? The grand scene of the thousands of flying swords shocked her even more. He was as mighty as a god. The flying swords flew straight down. Once they landed, the flying swords bounced up and went into his sleeves. Everyone's eyes stared at his sleeves. There were so many flying swords inside. Could it be that there were 2 storage bags tied inside? Yu Qianqiu picked up the storage bags at Furong's feet. After putting them away, he strode back to the center of the field and said loudly, "Who else is unconvinced? I still stand by my words. Those who can take out the money can come and compete with me. There's no limit to the number of people." As he said this, he waved his hand and pointed in a half circle. If you can afford it, it's fine if you all come at me together. Then he pointed at me Russian and said, those who are capable but don't have the money, you can find Great Minister me to solve the problem. He has already borrowed money once before, I believe he won't favor one over another and look down on others. Me Russian stared coldly at him. Even though he did not say anything, the faint murderous intent around him could be felt by the people standing nearby. Xianxia glanced at him and sneered. Now that I've revealed my 2 treasured sabers, I don't believe that no one will covet them. I want to see how much money your illumination peak has to lend out. I want to see if you'll lend it out or not. It's not easy to offend people, especially if he offended a lot of people. At the same time, it would be a headache if one family did not return the money, but if everyone did not return the money together, it would be infuriating. The people around them were whispering to each other. Xianxia waited for a while and shouted, is there no one here? If no one comes, then I'll leave. As he spoke, he began to walk back. Wait. Almost a dozen people shouted at the same time. Xianxia turned his head and saw a group of people discussing something. Then they all nodded. Oh my. More than 50 people walked out together. The leader pointed at him and said, Xianxia, you said it yourself that it's fine if you all come at me together. I have 58 people here, do you dare to accept the challenge? Damn it. Is there someone in the soul transformation stage hiding here? Xianxia glanced at this group of people and then felt relieved. With Nongzhu here, it was impossible that she would not say anything even if she saw someone in the soul transformation stage. Although Nongzhu always contradicted him, she would not act recklessly on some major issues. Even if she did not give face to him, she would give face to her master. I, Xianxia, am famous in the wuxia cultivation world for being a man of my words. What I say is like spilled water, I can't take it back. You can doubt anything but don't doubt my credibility. Xianxia patted his chest loudly and said, of course, no matter how many of you come, I can't miss a piece of spirit stones. 58 people, 58 million upper-level spirit stones. If you miss a piece, I won't accompany you. The group of people looked at each other, nodded and walked to me Russian together. Before they could speak, me Russian's usually calm face was already twitching. He didn't need to ask to guess the intentions of these people, to borrow spirit stones. Sure enough, the group of people bowed in unison. The leader cupped his hands and said, High Priest, we only have about 8 million upper-grade spirit stones on us. We hope that High Priest can lend us 50 million upper-grade spirit stones. We will definitely return it to you. His tone was very firm, as if it was not difficult to return the money. They probably thought that this time they had more people, they would definitely win. Once Xianxia heard this, it would be lively if everyone cooperated to borrow money. Once this kind of money was lent out, if there were 1 or 2 people who did not acknowledge the debt, then the money could not be recovered. Everyone would definitely push the blame to each other. Unless everyone was self-conscious. But this kind of hope was very slim. When it came to the matter of returning the money, everyone would first shrink back and wait to see if the other party would return the money. If the other party did return the money, then it would be fine. It seemed that the chain reaction of waiting and watching was to wait and see. If the other party did not return the money, why should I return the money? In Xianxia's previous life, when he had just started out in the business world, he had helped people collect their debts. Many bosses had encountered such a group of scoundrels, and after going through all sorts of trouble, they still couldn't collect their money. That was why they would look for people like him to forcibly collect their debts. Similar things were common, so Xianxia was happy. Me Russian frowned slightly as if he also felt that something was wrong. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Xianxia shout loudly, Since you want to borrow money, can you be more sincere? Bow more deeply, don't make it seem like they have to lend you money. If it were me, I would only say one thing, I don't have that much money with me and I won't lend it to you. More than 50 people looked back at the same time, and the leader snorted coldly, This is our business, you don't need to worry about it. I am a dog catching mice, meddling in other people's business, you guys continue. Xianxia waved his hand and said cheerfully. Nongzhu, who was quite familiar with his character, couldn't help but laugh. This guy was too bad, he just wouldn't let go of Hua Zongming's people. At that time she was afraid that if she couldn't get the money back, it would be equivalent to throwing it away for nothing. Even if she could get the money back, it would cause complaints from the other families, and they would blame him for lending money to these people to die. Nongzhu didn't think that these people would definitely be able to take advantage of Xianxia just because they had the advantage in numbers. From the faintly discernible murderous aura between this guy's eyebrows, it could be seen that this guy seemed to have made up his mind to start a massacre. Perhaps he was determined to make things big today. So, it seemed that those old things had forced this guy to do something desperate. This guy was going to use force. Russian looked at Xianxia, and a hint of fierceness flashed across his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He really wanted to say something like that to tactfully refuse, but Xianxia exposed his secret in advance and immediately fell into an impasse. There was a trap in front and behind him. Even if he borrowed it, it would still be a trap. If he didn't borrow it, he would fall right into the trap just now, and he didn't know what this group of people would think. It's not that I don't want to lend it, but I don't have many spiritual stones on me, only about 3 million left. How can I take out 50 million? Moreover, I've never carried so many spiritual stones on me before. You can't expect me to go back to Guangguang Peak to get it now, can you? He then took out a storage bag and handed it to them. If it can help you, then take it. The 50 people looked at each other, not knowing whether to take it or not, and immediately began to discuss with each other. Damn it. Old people really aren't vegetarians. They're like a lizard cutting off its tail to survive, sacrificing the pawn to save the rook. Xianxia silently cursed. After Russian did this, no one else would ask to borrow from him in the future. The group still borrowed the 3 million, and then everyone began to shake out their storage bags, gathering spiritual stones there. A group of cultivators with decent cultivation. For the money for a fight, they actually needed more than 50 people to come together. In the imperial sky Queen Earth, the mountain wind blew gently. Under the gaze of thousands of people, the 58 people, including the old and the strong, all dug into their storage bags. That scene made many people's hearts ache. Xianxia was stunned for a while. Even he himself felt that he couldn't watch it anymore. If he continued to watch, he might not be able to kill them later. Of the original 58 people, 47 left under Xianxia's dumbfounded expression, and the remaining 11 seemed to be the ones with the highest cultivation. It seemed that they felt that they had a better chance of winning the fight. Nongzhu's voice immediately sounded in Xianxia's ears. Among these 11 people, 6 are at the early stage of passing calamity, and the rest are at the late stage of gathering vitality. Be careful, kid. The leader, carrying a storage bag, walked to Wenrui respectfully, bowed, and then put the storage bag at Wenrui's feet, then turned around and walked back. Wenrui suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. The scene of gathering spiritual stones was really a bit sad. He suddenly felt that he was one of the main culprits. He turned around and took a look at Nongzhu, but the latter was blinking her eyes and trying to hold back her laughter. After that person returned to his original position, he waved his hand at Xianxia, who was in a daze, and shouted, "Where's your 1 million upper spiritual stones?" Xianxia came to his senses, trotted to Wenrui, squatted on the ground, took out a storage bag, put down his own, and picked up the one that was put by the person just now. When that person saw this, he was about to open his mouth to ask what he was doing, but found that this guy squatted on the ground and seemed to be counting the spiritual stones in the storage bag. The person opened his mouth to say something, but he swallowed it back. It was not wrong for Wenrui to check whether there were fewer spiritual stones in the storage bag. What could he say? If he went to check, Xianxia would also have nothing to say. He is also a person with a master's background. He will not leave you out in public. Wenrui really could not stand it anymore and could not help but say, "That's not necessarily true. The more famous a family is, the more they like to do despicable and shameless things. 8 million is not a small number." When Xianxia said this, he also finished counting the spiritual stones, nodded and said, "That's a good number." Nongzhu could not help but ridicule, "Kid, aren't you a little too explicit? Don't you feel ashamed?" Xianxia replied with a look that said it's none of your business, then immediately waved to the 11 people and said, "Let's start." Then he took out a flying sword from his sleeve, stepped on it and flew straight to the sky, this time flying very high. You're tuning in to this Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.